Trauma is often the result of an overwhelming amount of stress from a situation that exceeds one's ability to cope, such as the death of a loved one, the end of a meaningful relationship, or the rejection of a loved one. Do you pretend that everything's good when it really isn't? When you don't have a positive and healthy way of dealing with your trauma, you end up repressing your negative emotions. It can be hard to recognize unresolved trauma on the surface, especially within ourselves. So, here are 9 signs you're still suffering from unhealed trauma. 1. You resist positive change. When something good comes into your life, is your first instinct to be suspicious of it? Do you have an innate feeling of shame or guilt whenever you allow yourself to grow attached to someone or celebrate your own success? If so, you might be carrying unresolved trauma within you. You have a hard time accepting positive change and may even try to resist it at first because deep down inside, you feel like you don't deserve to be happy. 2. You need to plan for everything. Do you have a need to stay completely in control? Do you feel frustrated and lost whenever things don't go the way you expect? Your need for control is most likely rooted in a traumatic experience that left you feeling helpless and vulnerable. As a result, you micromanage everything and worry about the things that are out of your control. This shows that you have a deep seated distrust in both yourself and the world in general. 3. You have a strong fear of failure. Being afraid of failure is a normal part of human nature. However, a strong fear of failure can be unhealthy if it starts to outweigh your motivation to succeed. Not only do you miss out on a lot of opportunities and stifle your creativity and ambition because of it, but it can also lead to perfectionism and insecurity. It might be instilled in you by unresolved trauma that causes you to have a negative belief in yourself and internalize your shortcomings. 4. You have a strong fear of success. Alternately, repressed trauma can also manifest through a strong fear of success. Did you ever hold yourself back from getting something you wanted, not because you feared you might not get it, but because you feared what would happen when you did? You're afraid of losing what you'll have even before you achieve it. The tendency to unconsciously sabotage your own chances of success is often associated with those who were abandoned or lost a loved one at a young age. 5. You have difficulty concentrating. Trauma has a lot of damaging psychological effects, and it's not uncommon for victims to suddenly have difficulty concentrating. If you've been having gaps in your memory, blacking out often, and finding it hard to keep your train of thought, it might be your mind crying out to you for help, asking you to work through your trauma. 6. You have trouble asking for help. Do you have trouble opening up to others about what happened to you? If you've experienced some form of abuse or mistreatment, you usually struggle with asking for help. You'd rather suffer in silence because you're too afraid to reach out to someone else. You don't want to be rejected, denied, judged, or seen as weak by those around you. 7. You often hurt yourself or others. Do you lash out at other people when you're experiencing intense emotions? Do you push your loved ones away and isolate yourself whenever you have to deal with a problem? If you're still hurting from unhealed trauma, there are times when you might end up taking it out on yourself or those you care about. You become emotionally volatile, out of control, and overly sensitive. You lose your temper, break things, and may even resort to self harm. 8. You struggle with low self esteem. There are a lot of ways trauma can skew your self image, especially if it's rooted in your early childhood experiences. Abuse, abandonment, and neglect can all lead you to question your own self worth. You struggle to feel good about yourself if the abuse was inflicted upon you by someone you loved. Studies have shown that patients with PTSD often suffer from low self esteem and feelings of worthlessness. And 9. You have unexplained psychological symptoms. Do you feel more anxious and panicky than before? Do you find it hard to feel happy or find pleasure from the things you used to enjoy? Have you lost your appetite or have trouble sleeping well at night? According to research, anxiety, depression, disassociation, depersonalization, panic attacks, frequent flashbacks, nightmares, and emotional distress are all common in patients with PTSD. Have you or someone you love ever experienced a traumatic situation? If so, how do you plan to overcome it? If you're still suffering from any lingering psychological trauma, it's important that you reach out to a mental health care professional today and get the help you need to get better. Healing from trauma takes time and effort, but it's worth it, and it's necessary in order to truly move forward in life and find some peace of mind.
Welcome to the Proof in the Pudding podcast show. I'm the host this evening. I go by the name of Sion 919. I'm very excited about this show. I got my family in the building. She coming through to give us some help and some tips, just watching the video right there. I thought I had issues, but I really have some issues because I know I'm dealing with at least 6 of the 9 signs. So today I'm going to get my help. And hopefully somebody out there is going to get their help today on the Proof podcast. So without any further ado, I want to introduce one of the realest and most honest females I know. She's my cousin's wife. Let's give it up for Miss Natalie Collier, y'all. Let's welcome her to the Proof. How you doing?
So excited. I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
I'm definitely excited to have you, So we're talking about trauma, a real important topic that a lot of people deal with. Like I said earlier, I thought I had issues, but watching the video, it may be some things going on right there. So, what first got you into this topic? I know that it's dear to your heart. You like helping people. Yes. But let's start in the beginning. How did you wind up here?
So make a long story kind of short for y'all. I am biracial. And my mother was a single mother. My parents were not married. And they lived in 2 different states. So that was definitely kind of a barrier growing up. Dealing with, being biracial and kind of trying to find out where you kind of fit in at, I grew up with my mom's family, so they look different than me. Trying to figure that out, navigating that. And then I experienced my first trauma when I was 12. My grandmother died. We were extremely close. Right. And then a year later, my uncle died. We were extremely close. And then after that, I endured my own trauma of sexual assault. And then a couple years later, I had a reoccurring event with rape. So you're kind of stacking trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And as a child, you're not cognitively developed like we are as an adult. Right. And we're still cognitively developing until we're in our 20s, our early 20s. So children don't know how to process those type of events. And usually what we do is we kind of lash out. You're acting out. You don't really know why you're acting out. You have mistrust. You're kind of all over the place. And as I got older, I'm sure I did some things that helped add on to my own trauma. I went into the service, but then it just really was placed on my heart to really get into the psychology field. Right. And so I did that. And then I, got a bachelor's in psychology, got a master's in forensic psychology. And I learned throughout that process, because you have to do therapy and as you're going to school. So I kind of learned that I'm not a victim. Like I went through something, but I'm not a victim. So I like to use my platform now as an opportunity to be relatable, not so much as giving countertransference with my clients, but knowing that they're not alone because I can identify or relate to them. Right. And so that's why it's so passionate to me, is that we all have a story. We've all been through something. It's just how do we use that to make an influence in other people's lives? Because I think a lot of people suffer silently.
Right. I agree.
So, and then here we are. I've been in the field 10 years, so.
Wow. So over 10 years, I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot. And like you said, the thing is suffering in silence. A lot of us, we go through things and it's like, depending on your upbringing or depending on your family, a lot of times the family says, just deal with it. I've seen my cousins break down at their dad's funeral and say, the main thing that I took away from my father, he said, whatever you're going through, just handle it. And it's like, so like you said, all this trauma and stuff is stacking on from a childhood as we get older. As Black men, especially I can speak for being a Black man, we don't really have outlets or we don't have places where we can go to talk about these things. In your experience, have you seen a lot of this in your field?
I have. I have. And I'll give you just a prime example of that. I have worked as an MST therapist. I have been a therapist. I have been a case manager. I have worked in residential units for adolescent sex offenders. I've worked in the adult juvenile, the adult county jail system. I've also worked in the adult prison system.
Wow.
So I've worked with kind of just a little bit of everybody, children, families, male and female adults, individually and collectively. And trauma is a very big thing within our community. Yes. And there is such a stigma attached with feeling like you can go to mental health, even though you have a mental health issue.
Right.
And that's why I kind of pride myself now on less of a therapy focus, but more on a psychoeducational focus, because I think we need to be educated enough about mental health and about mental illness and different things so that we feel comfortable going and seeking help.
Right.
And then everybody's not a good fit. I just want to throw that out there real quick, because, you know, when you hear people talk about therapy, it's like, well, I didn't like them. I didn't feel comfortable. Right. And my thing is, you're talking about something that's very personal to you. You want to make sure you have a good fit. You may have to go through 3 or 4 therapists until you find the person that you're looking for. And I do understand that there are also cultural differences. You know, I've seen it in my community where someone of another ethnic group, different socioeconomic background comes in, and they're like, oh, that ain't gonna work. They can't relate to me. They don't understand. It's different. You know, so I think it's really finding what fits and then being comfortable in exploring that option.
Yeah, that's very important right there, because you're sharing private moments with you. You're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
So it's definitely important to find the fit. So let me ask you, okay, with your studies, what are some of the common things that most people deal with, and they deal with trauma, and they may not even know that they're suffering from trauma?
They're withdrawn from people. They don't have a healthy balance of being able to be vulnerable and emotional in the right settings. Afraid to show themselves. They rather show what they have or share their successes, but not really be intimate about who they are, and really peeling back some layers, having trust issues in doing that. Irritability, depression, anger, constant sadness, no motivation. I always like to say too, perception. Their perception is off. They perceive everything in a negative light. They never can find the positivity in anything. I take those all as signs of trauma. And I also take signs of people easily influenced by others.
Right.
Quick to want to do what everybody else is doing, and afraid to kind of go against the grain and do what feels good to them.
Right. Wow. And that's real right there. And like you said, being withdrawn, irritable, and it's kind of like hiding behind an image or things. I see a lot of times as Black people in our community, and this is for everybody. It's not just for Black people, but I can speak for the Black community.
Right.
A lot of times everybody wants to turn up. They're drinking. I got to get high. I got to be doing something. Right. I can't be sitting still. Why do people do that? Is it that they're afraid to deal with themselves, or they try to drown out all these emotions? So they got to be constantly moving around. I got to be at the club. I got to be drinking. I got to be smoking. I got to be doing something. Why do us as Black people, we feel like that's the solution?
Because we don't know how to cope. We don't know how to cope. And you have to think though, when we are introduced to trauma, the wide range of emotions that we have and how we're all over the place, right? So you never learn to deal with that. Over time, you kind of learn to master. So I like to say we as children, we learn by what our parents do, not so much as what they say, right? They always, and we come from the generation where, at least my mother used to be like, because I told you so, or I'd be like, well, why? That's not even, don't even ask why, because you ain't gonna get the answer. You're not gonna get the answer. So you watch how your parents cope. You watch how they deal with stress. You watch how they handle the problems that arise in their lives. And in the Black community, we have a high issue of substance abuse.
Right.
We have traumas with lack of fathers in a household. That's traumatic within itself. We have mothers who are overworked, or they have their own issues. They can't give enough attention. So we learned that if there's not the availability, we're not having the conversations that we should be having with our children. We're not showing them healthy ways to cope. We learn to cope any way we know how. And a lot of times we want that numbing feeling. We don't want flashbacks of the trauma, right? We don't want to deal with the anxiety that's attached to the trauma. We just want to feel some kind of normalcy. And for some people, that is to numb that. So if I get drunk or if I get high and I'm constantly at a party, I don't have to think about it. It can't be present at the forefront. But really, it's really eating them up in their everyday life. And they don't even see that the trauma is causing them to self-destruct.
Nah, that's true right there. And you said a powerful thing. It starts in the early ages. Mm-hmm. So around what age would you say that trauma normally happens to a person? Around what age years?
That is a very, I can't answer that specifically because it depends on what kind of trauma we're talking about. So, we could be talking about sexual abuse. We could be talking about physical abuse. We could be talking about mental abuse. Even verbal abuse can be emotional and cause, mental, abuse. And then sometimes we get the trauma that is passed down. So there's a lady, her name is Dr. Joy DeGruy. She is amazing. If anybody's watching and they're really interested in this specific topic, she does a topic on post-traumatic slave syndrome. And her research is phenomenal. And what she really talks about is how, back in the slave days, they would take the biggest, baddest Black men they could find. They would rape him in front of, all the other slaves. They would beat him, and then they would eventually kill him to create a to traumatize the rest of the slaves. So then you think about, she would use that as the example, but then say, okay, well, think about the mothers that are giving birth to sons during this time. They're going to teach their sons to be docile, to be calm, to kind of hide emotion. So they're using the traumatic event that they experienced, that they saw, and they're kind of instilling that same fear into their sons. Wow. So now we're passing traumas down based on how it affected us. We want to protect, our offspring, but sometimes we're not aware of how detrimental that really is as we're passing that down. So trauma can be something that we pass down through ideology.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Let's touch on that a little bit. I want to go to the other stuff too. Okay. Let's talk about passing it down. So that means, if I'm dealing with trauma, that's even more the reason why we have to know the signs and we have to get help. So if I'm dealing with trauma, I can unknowingly be passing down my trauma to my children.
Right.
Let's break it down.
Because of the fear, right?
Right.
So let's talk about, we'll use women for an example. Women, please don't get mad at me. But we'll use women for an example, right? A woman's been in a very bad relationship, very, very bad relationship. And, she's got daughters.
Right.
As her daughters get older, the way she talks about men. Well, he ain't this and he ain't that. And you got to get you one that do this. And he need to be able to do that. And if he can't do this and you're putting the ideology in her mind.
Right.
She's already feeling like, okay, this is going to be unsafe.
Right.
So there's already a fear. Now you're going into relationships with a fear. You're automatically projecting what somebody else's standards are or boundaries that are already unhealthy, because those standards and boundaries are unhealthy. It's not based on a real relationship or real love or real navigation. You're projecting that onto a child who now grows up in the world with that same ideology that you have, because you're scarred, because you have trauma.
Right.
And then a lot of times too, parents who have trauma sometimes will live vicariously through their children.
Exactly.
We see that a lot, especially and I like to say, especially in our community, I see that a lot, especially when I was working with children whose parents wanted them to be athletes, forcing these kids to do things, to play football, to play every sport, to do these things. And sometimes that's not what they want to do.
Right.
But the parent is living vicariously through the child, which is unhealthy. So you're forcing and pushing an ideology on someone else, and you're not giving them a chance of self-exploration to kind of go through the experiences that we should naturally have as a part of our development.
Wow. So living vicariously through our kids and putting our fears on our children.
Yes.
And sometimes even meaning well, not knowing, meaning well, but you're damaging the child and they grow up. So it becomes like they're desensitized because to them it's normal.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us, we deal with these traumas because even myself, as I'm talking to you, as I've been researching, I realize I am damaged. I have a lot of traumas that I deal with that I don't share because of being, an image. I don't want people to think, oh, Sion is going through things. But when I'm alone, these are things that I really deal with. So that's why this show is really important to me, because I know I'm not the only one.
No.
I'm not the only one. So I look back at my childhood years.
Okay.
Certain things that, I went through, I didn't agree with. I didn't know how to express. So I wound up lashing out a lot of times. I was rebellious. I got to a certain age where I didn't understand. And if I could be honest, it's like it was a truth that I thought that the family, was a thing that I always knew my whole life. This was truth. Then one day a stranger came in and kind of opened my world and said, listen, you've been living a lie.
Right.
And now it made me look at my family different. Because it's like, and a lot of times in the Black family, we have all types of secrets. And it's like, we don't want to say this, or we don't want to expose Uncle so-and-so and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But when the stranger told me, it made me feel violated from my family. So I built up a resentment. And we're talking about at the age of like 11, 12 years old. And from that moment, I noticed I kind of got off path and wound up going to the dark side, so to say. I started acting out. I started talking back, being disrespectful because I felt like they disrespected me. Y'all lied to me. Why would you hold a secret?
Right.
I say that to say, so then as the disrespect comes in and I'm just dealing, this is the way it is. I'm not getting therapy. I'm not talking to anybody. So I'm just going off of what I think is how I'm supposed to deal with these things. I say that to say, so me and my dad relationship became strained from that. So, early teenage years, we're arguing, bickering back and forth where it gets nasty. Now, fast forward, I'm a dad now.
Right.
I see the same cycles coming back with my sons.
Okay.
Is that common or is that generational? How does that work? It's like I see my son in me at 16 years old, where he's coming at me with like, Dad, I don't understand why you and mommy won't together. Why this? Right. But we never had the conversation.
Right.
And he's expressing himself through anger. He's expressing himself through rebellion. He's expressing himself through disobedience because it's like, Dad, I don't understand why this thing happened. Is that common?
I think it's very common. More common than you realize, especially when working with children. It's very common. Children are, again, like we said, we're a very sensitive subject because they're still cognitively developing. Right. So they don't understand all the aspects of an adult relationship or why things don't work. So I always try to tell parents, depending on what it is, what is a way that we can kind of explain it a little bit, but we're going to have to reserve some of this until they're really old enough to truly understand.
Right.
But they're going to keep asking. Especially when we start talking about parents and households. Now, I can say that my mother is a good, I would love to use her as an example because my grandparents were married for 35 years.
Right.
And they divorced when my mother was 16.
Wow.
And my mother was adopted. And so that was trauma for her.
Right.
And how that, and back in that day and age, people didn't tell you what was going on. This is just what it is, and this is how it's going down, right? But my mother expressed how that affected her in her navigation and moving forward in relationships as an adult. And I find that to be, now I understand some of what she was going through when I look back in my childhood and be like, well, now I get it. You know what I'm saying? But then I didn't get it. But I wasn't old enough either to understand. But I think at 16, we have to be able to be honest with our children.
Right.
Because our children are looking at us not only as protectors, but they want us to be able to communicate with them. Right. Because we are the source of the first line of trust. We are the everything for them, right, to a certain extent. And our children need to know that this is a safe haven. So I should be able to come to you and say, hey, I'm curious to know why this didn't work, because it is a natural, innate thing for children to need both of their parents.
Right.
A man provides one role, a woman provides another role. When you remove a role, they're missing that other half.
Right.
Right? So they're not getting some of those things that maybe a woman would provide. Or if the man's not there, they're not getting what a man would provide in that relationship, in that dynamic.
Right.
So I think it's best to try to explain it in a manner that is age appropriate.
Right, right.
To where they understand. And it's okay to validate those feelings for them. Because I think a lot of times kids need to be validated.
They definitely
need to know that what they're feeling is 100% okay to feel that way. You are entitled to feel the way that you feel.
Right.
And, why do you feel that way? What can I do? Or what do you think would make you feel, how can we improve how you feel? Tell me what it is that you need from me to be able to help improve this.
Right.
But we have to be realistic. We're not together because, two people, they grow apart. Or right. Two people, they may have thought that they were, compatible, and then life just showed them that they weren't. Doesn't mean that we don't love you. Doesn't mean that we don't care about you. But maybe us being together wouldn't be a productive, conducive environment for you.
Right, right.
But they see other parents, it's kind of that, it's rare these days. Right. To see a man and a woman in a household with their children. We're just not in that day and age anymore because of so many other factors. So there's a lot of children that grow up, maybe a weekend here, a weekend there, or a summer here, or a summer there, But a lot of times we make choices and decisions that we don't hope that they go that way, but sometimes they just go that way,
Yeah. And that's very true. And the thing is like, and again, I'm going to keep it on myself, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of spectrums, but
okay.
I just want to be honest. We have being honest, and we're talking about traumas. So it always baffles my mind, because like I grew up with one brother. We're day and night. We're day and night.
Okay.
We grew up in the same house. Now, my brother, he's been married, I'd say about 13 years now.
Okay.
My parents, on the other hand, were married 44 years.
Okay.
Okay. Now, me, early, I'm doing my rebellion. Somehow I fell into depression. Somehow I fell into low esteem. I found that womanizing was how I was coping to feel better about me. So now I look back as a man, and it's like raising my son, who's 16 now, early in the years, is like, certain principles, like you said, I'm putting traumas on him, like, yo, nah, son,
Right.
To be honest, most people watching the show, they know when I was doing my rap, my handle was the panty raider.
Okay.
Looking back now, that's not something I'm proud of now.
Right.
But his whole life growing up, my dad's the panty raider. So in his mind, and then as we're talking, how things come back to you.
Yes.
I remember at probably 7 years old, my great aunt looking at me, and it was all of the boy cousins. And she said, he's a good one. He's a good one. But this one, I had a mouth on me. I was too much, even at 7 years old. She said, this one here, he's going to be a little Romeo. He's going to be a heartbreaker. I didn't understand what she was saying at that time. I just knew I didn't want to break people's heart. I didn't know who Romeo was. But I remember her saying, but this one is going to be a heartbreaker. Looking back now, a lot of times things that people speak over you,
yes,
unknowingly or knowingly,
yes,
you start to walk this stuff out.
Yeah.
A lot of my issues now with this low esteem, the stuff I deal with, when I look back, a lot of the root causes were things that people spoke over me. At 16, when I'm wild, and I remember people saying, This one, he'll never get it together. This one will never. So to combat that, I'm going to prove them wrong by doing wrong things. I'm going to show you trying to prove something, but not the right way. You understand what I mean? It's like I'm trying to come up with a good solution, but I'm taking the wrong means to try and make it happen. So then, like in the video, it said, well, we begin to hurt ourselves. We begin to damage ourselves. We begin to be afraid of success. If I can be honest, one of my biggest holdbacks or setbacks is when things start happening good for me.
Okay.
I'm looking for, when is it going to go back? So I begin to start self-sabotaging the situation. It's like, yo, this whole, I see the little crack. So now I'm jumping on it because in my mind, if you're going to abandon me, if you're going to leave, do it now, then 10 years down the road. So now I see all this stuff is tied to traumas that I didn't even know I had, insecurities in myself. Is this common? And how do you deal with even the things you don't know? You see the patterns, you see the actions, but you don't know the root why you do some of the things that you do.
So I'm a firm believer in you gotta go back. You know, we have to identify the root cause of that. You have to identify the root cause, because once you deal with the trauma, it no longer is able to have the effect on you that it has on you when you don't deal with it.
Right.
And that's why we see adults now that are broken or toxic. You know, they're just broken or toxic people because they have been carrying around this trauma baggage that has altered their perception and their outlook on life and things of that nature. Now they're just carrying it around, and it affects every single thing that they do.
Right.
So you have to identify the trauma. What was it? You know, and like I say, for girls, you know, a lot of us young girls who didn't have daddies, that's a trauma.
That's a trauma.
It's a trauma, right? Because our daddies are, you know, our first loves. Right. The first one to take us out on a date, the first one to tell us that we're beautiful, the first one to build us as women. And we all know that a lot of times we end up with people that are similar to our parents. I think that's a very interesting thing. You know, we date men somewhat that are similar like our fathers, you know. Right. Men will date women that are similar to their mothers, you know. But that's a trauma. So what do women naturally want to do? We want to replace that with the first man that tells us that we're beautiful, the first man that makes us feel good. Now you're searching for something, and a lot of times it ain't what you think that it is. You know what I'm saying? It's all about your sex. So some women start to learn that their sex is between their legs. It's not that they don't want anything more. It's not that they don't hope to have anything better. But the reality of getting something better means that they themselves would have to change. Wow. In order to have change, right?
Right.
But the idea of change itself is scary. And it's work, because it means that you have to take a level of responsibility and accountability. Because we can say, oh, yes, this trauma did happen to me. But at what stage do we become accountable for our own actions? At what stage are we cognitively aware that this is not okay? Right? But we want to stay where we are, because even though it's a bad situation, it's comfortability. I know exactly what's going to happen if I deal with A, B, C, and D. I go over here to E, D, and F.
I don't know
nothing about E, D, and F.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And E, D, and F has a greater potential of hurting me in a way that I'm not prepared for.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So I'd rather deal with this level of hurt. Even though it hurts, I can handle it. But if they hurt me over here, I'm not prepared for that. I can't handle it. Wow. So we don't see the need to change ourselves. We want to kind of sometimes live in our victim. Right. And I tell people, you can't be a victim all your life. No, you're never gonna, because you're giving the trauma power. And that's what people don't realize. You're giving the trauma power. Anytime, like, and I'll use myself for an example. I lost my virginity due to sexual assault. I was 12 years old. And You know, I wish I would have had some of the choices that other people had when it came to, you know, you hear your girlfriends and everybody talk about their first time, and I didn't get that, right?
Right.
But I chose in my early 20s that I had to let that go.
Right.
Because that was dragging me down. That was affecting my relationships. It made me hold on to guilt. It made me hold on to shame. It made me feel some kind of way about myself.
Right.
But I'm only giving that person the power that they wanted to have.
Right.
So if I forgive you and I start my road to healing, you don't have no power over me.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? I can sit here and say, yes, I was raped, but I'm not a victim.
Right.
That person holds no power. That event holds no power. But you have to work through that. And the biggest part of working through trauma is to be honest. And a lot of times people don't want to be honest.
They don't want to be honest.
Especially when I work with male victims of sexual abuse.
Right.
A grown man to this day will have a hard time saying, you know what, I was molested or I was sexually assaulted, because they feel like it does something to their masculinity. And a lot of times with them, the womanizing is an important fact. It's important because to them, it's proving that they're a man.
Right.
It's proving to them that nothing happened to them, but they're unable to form healthy relationships.
Right. And
so you really do have to deal with the root of the trauma. You got to identify so that you can start your healing process.
Right. And that's so true and so powerful, because even as I'm listening to you, I'm flashbacking on my life.
Mm-hmm.
As a young boy, you're growing up, you get with an older woman. For some reason, that's like a points badge of honor. Mm-hmm. For years, my mother would always get hot. I would tell the story, you know, around my father, my uncles, and my cousins, because to me, I felt like I was the man. So I'll tell you a story. You know, we had a babysitter. I was probably 9 years old. My brother had to be about 12.
Mm-hmm.
The babysitters that used to watch us, they had to be between 16 and 18. And they were 3 sisters, 3 female and 3 sisters. So they would watch us. And, you know, my brother was a little bit older. So the middle girl used to flirt with my brother. She had a crush on him. Okay. Somehow one day, they decided it's bath time. Now, mind you, I'm 6 years old. Bath time, I know these are females, so I'm thinking Coming to America vibes. They're going to sponge me down. This is dope. You know what I'm saying? This is dope. So I'm being honest. I'm being real. This is true story. So now they washing me. One thing lead to another. I get excited. Now I'm 6 years old. I get excited. Oh, da. From there, it goes a little further. Mm-hmm. I'm telling a story now at 14, 15. My mother hears it. She's pissed.
She should be.
You know what I'm saying? Because these girls violated you. And I'm like, yo, mom, you're tripping. Like, yo, I don't want to get them in trouble. You know, that was the best thing that could have happened to me in my life, not knowing that was a sexual assault. So then we'll fast forward. Now I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm getting into girls now. I'm trying to have my experiences or whatever. My first experience was horrible. And I'm going to be real. So I'm thinking, yo, I'm doing what I do or whatever. But the girl, she was like, yo, the dude don't know what he's doing. She goes to the school, tells everybody. Oh. So, right. So you can just imagine what that's like. So everybody, yo, oh man, yo, he's trash. Girls, nobody wants to date me. None of this. So I wound up those summers. I would go to Wilmington for the summer. So this summer I'm about to go. Now I'm going into high school at this time. So I'm like, I gotta figure this out before I get to high school, because junior high, it was over. Like, yo, that's the guy. And I'm hoping I'm in a whole new school that this reputation doesn't follow me. Right. So now this summer, I'm trying to figure it out. So it's kind of like the inkwell. Mm-hmm. This whole summer, that's all I'm focused on. I got to learn the moves. I got to get it together before school starts. And as a kid, this is important to us. You understand what I'm saying? So long story short, I winds up meeting a girl that's my brother's girlfriend's aunt. So if I'm 16, she wound up being about 25.
Oh.
So all summer, that's why I said inkwell. So all summer, I'm telling you, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. Every time I say it, so you little boy, yo, stop. You little boy, stop. I'm gonna get you. My mind was made up. I know you're 25. You know the moves. So if I can please you, I know I can please the girls my age. You understand what I'm saying? So long story short, over the summer, I wound up getting her. So when we get together or whatever, I'm like, yo, I don't want to be with you. I want to learn the moves. So she agrees. Okay, What do you want to know? Everything. She said everything. I said everything. So now we're looking back. We're talking trauma. I'm thinking I'm getting hooked up. She's hooking me up. Not realizing that this was going to be my sexual assault twice. So now I'm dealing with a 24-year-old that's teaching me to move. So now when I get a 16, 17-year-old, it's like, bam, I can blow their mind because, yo, how does he know this? So now while I'm transferring the assault to them, because it's like to them, like, yo, he's got it going on. So in one sense, I'm feeling better because I'm not, oh, he don't know the move. Now he's the man. But at the same time, I'm damaging myself and I'm damaging them without even knowing. Is that common?
Yes. Yes. And just to point out that the most female adolescent sex offenders are usually they usually start victimizing at about 14. Wow. And a lot of them are victims of sexual abuse themselves. Right. And they usually are babysitters. They usually sexually abuse kids that they're close to. Female adolescent sex offenders are not like your male sex offenders, or even your male adolescent sex offenders can also molest children that they know. But females, that's primarily that their MO is to sexually abuse children that they know, usually children that they babysit, because they were overly sexualized. They were over-sexualized. Usually female adolescent sex offenders have been victims of sexual abuse by multiple partners at a very young age.
Wow. So
that was their trauma. And then their trauma induces trauma to you, right? Because they're over-sexualized. And I say this, that children, children can be stimulated, but it doesn't, because it's a physiological response.
Right, right.
But the brain does not, and the body really is not ready for that type of interaction.
Right.
Even as we get a little older, we'll start going through some changes or whatever, but it doesn't mean that we're ready. But right. No, I think you see that a lot with males who've been sexually assaulted by women when they're younger. They end up usually having relationships with older women.
Wow.
It is a comfortability there. Right. Just like, when I don't know if he's a great person to bring up, but even like R. Kelly, I kind of empathize with him a little bit.
Right. Mental, he has issues, right?
He has issues. He was sexually assaulted. He told his mother. He went for the protection. He tried to get the safety of his mother, and they took the man. They were going to take him to court, and so the man paid his mom off.
Wow.
So that was the first breakdown of barrier of protection.
Right.
But she was in a very impoverished situation, so she thought that she was doing the right thing, but really she wasn't thinking about the emotional and mental welfare of her child. And then again, for him to be sexually assaulted again by a family member, right? So it's common when you become over-sexualized at a young age. It is very common for you to become promiscuous because you're hypersexualized,
right?
Way before you need to be hypersexualized,
right? Right.
So it is a common thing.
Wow.
It is a very common thing because we start to learn that that's our value,
right?
We think that that's our value. Our value is what we have between our legs and what we can give or make people feel. And it also gives us a temporary gratification of closeness.
Right.
Closeness and intimacy that doesn't last beyond that moment. So it's like, I got to have that again to feel close to someone without really understanding the real need for true intimacy between a man and a woman is not about sex itself.
Right. Right. That's very true right there. And I'm learning that over the years. I'm learning that it's more mental, it's more emotional.
Yes.
Then the physical is only better when the foundation is laid in mental and emotion support.
But I think your mother was really upset because you didn't say anything probably to her at that time where she felt like she could have been the protector that you needed her to be. So in hindsight, I know when my mother found out about my sexual abuse, and that wasn't until I was an adult, I didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing. So my mother felt powerless.
Right.
They feel powerless that they were not able to do what was needed to be done to show you the protection and the care and to get you the help that you needed to resolve that issue. Instead, it manifests into something completely different over time.
Right. And that's true. So let me ask you, why is it that we stay quiet? Why do we say nothing?
Fear. And I know when I have worked with victims of sexual assault, and children anyway, for the primary fact is it's someone they know,
right,
and they don't feel like nobody's going to believe them because that other person isn't an adult.
Right.
So if it's an adult in my family and I say so and so did something to me, is my mom really going to believe me because they're an adult?
Right.
But people don't understand that children really don't know how to lie.
They don't.
We teach them how to do that through our behavior. They see us tell tales and stuff like that. But females are not physically abusive. Yes. Females, I've never seen females be physically. I just got a little sidetracked because I read the comment, but I don't see them be physically as far as like fighting or that kind of physical abuse. But I do know they have the ability to be sexually abusive. But now I lost my train of thought.
You got another one. Right, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, because I think kind of going back to what you were saying and just to the comment, I do think that people feel like they've done something that nobody else has done.
Right.
So in order to kind of undo or to mask the trauma a little bit is to try to find a triumph in that victory.
Right.
Well, she was older than me.
Right.
So I got an experience under my belt that nobody has. So you try to find a different way to flip the trauma than to actually just acknowledge that it was trauma in itself.
Right. Now that's very true. And one thing that I had to learn was to unlearn what I was taught, because my people, as we growing up parents, they don't come with a manual.
No.
So a lot of my uncles and stuff like that, they always told us, you a player, it's quantity over quality. But as I got older, and again, my mom is a major part of my foundation. So even when I'm having certain conversations with my son, I'm noticing it because I have a 16-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. But the way that I'm parenting at the 2-year-old now is totally different than the 16-year-old when he was 2. So I say that to say, as my son's growing up, you like me, boy, da, 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 yo, you got your girlfriend yet? Da, 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 teasing them, yo, boy, I see you over there, yo, you try to be like Pops. This 15-year-old, 6 going into 16. So now what I'm realizing, I don't want him to deal with the traumas of not knowing how to love properly, not womanizing, not, all these damage hurting women that you don't even know you're doing. So I'm realizing now I'm trying to correct it. Where it's like, yo, son, no, quality over quantity. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, you don't have to sleep with 100 women. You can have one woman and love her 100 ways. That's a man. I was taught the more women, the more you was a man. But now I realize that was my insecurity. That was my comfort. Like, I don't feel good about me. So let me go out here and bag this girl, or yo, she's smiling at me, or I know I can take her home tonight. So now I feel good. But like you said, it's temporary. I don't want my sons repeating the same process. So it's like, even with my older son, It's like we don't have a hug and yo, what's up, son? It's more like, you know, he's in his eyes, he's trying to be like that. So it's like, what's up, dad? You good? You know, it's like, yo, he's already, and it's like, yo, you 16, bro, you got your whole life to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, be a kid, but in his mind, and then that's a trauma from his sisters. He was always joking. He was always he's the little brother. So like, get out of here. You were some da. So now that he's hitting 15, 16, I see him taking the mature role. So it's now it's like, even though he's the silly one, he's, you know, he's funny, he likes to have a good time, he's fighting that. So it's like, now he's too cool. It's like he's in that mode. Like, but I know him and I know he's not being himself. So when he's around, nobody's around, he's in there goofing off. The moment somebody sees him, he's got to tighten up. He's got to, and it's like, that's already a trauma put in motion. Where my 2-year-old, he's the total opposite. He's a thug all the time. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why he was born out. Like, anybody that knows him, he was born fighting. He was a fighter, born fighting. Like, he'll hit you, scratch, whatever. But on the flip side, he's the most clingy. Dad kissed me. Dad picked me up. Like, Dad, you ain't leaving. He's going to cry if I go to the bathroom. I want to come. You can't come while Daddy's using the bathroom.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like, from the outside looking in, it's like he's this tough exterior. He's just already, but they're total night and day. Where it's like the one that's silly on the inside, he's naturally silly. But when people from the outside looking in, he has this hard exterior. You know, he's playing tough. I'm macho. Yeah, the ladies love me. You know, yeah, my swag and all that. Where the flip side of the 2-year-old, by nature, he just has a hardcore swag with him. It's like, but to the people that know him, he's a teddy bear.
Right.
But what I'm realizing from talking to you is the same thing with me. People see my image. Sion is this. Sion is that. Sion is this. Your husband will tell you. Robin will tell you. Sion is a jokester. That joke is, you know, things that people don't know. They'll never see. I'm emotional. I'm all of that. But people, I don't let people see that. But now I see the detriment in my kids of wearing the mask. It's like when you around people, you got to be a certain way. A lot of times people see, oh, he's a rapper. He's this, that, and the third. But like me and Cruz have real conversations where it's like, yo, I'm falling apart. Where it's like, bro, I'm trying to hold it together, but I'm really falling apart. Or people look like he's got it all together. He's this, he's that. And it's like, I'm one step away from falling into depression, but I can't allow myself to fall in depression because I have kids. I have people depending on me. But I'm one turn away. And it's like, so to everybody else, he's this strong guy because I'm always encouraging. But even in that, the one that's always encouraging is the ones that need encouraging the most. So it's like I'm making somebody else smile, but at the same time, when they smile, and, oh, thank you, Sion, and they walk away, I'm in my car breaking down in tears because I'm dealing with stuff.
Right.
And is that common? People reflect it. So it's like, because I'm weak right now, I'm going to give you strength. Or because I need encouragement, let me encourage somebody else. Is that common?
I think we see that a lot more with men. Men like to hide, again, their vulnerability and their ability to be emotional, because, you know, men were raised that vulnerability and to be able to show emotion is weakness.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So men have been programmed to suffer in silence. Men are supposed to be men. They're supposed to be strong physically, mentally. You know, they're analytical. They're rational. Men have stressors too. Men have trauma too. Men have things that they go through every day, just like we do.
Right.
And I think that it is sad as a society that we preach that the less vulnerable a man is, the more masculine a man is, and that's so far from the truth.
Right.
We need our men to be able to know the balance of when to be emotional and when to be vulnerable.
Right.
And we need to, in this culture specifically, to embrace that.
Right.
We have to embrace that. And that's why I say I feel like our culture is so damaged on so many different sides, because we have women who are raising children alone, and they're forced to have to work these jobs, and you know, some of them do, some of them don't. We have some women in the culture that just, hey, you know, hey, that's a whole other topic, you know, hey.
Right.
But you got this idea that women have they just feel burdened with all the things that they have to do, but they don't look at the fact that men have also had some traumas. You know what I'm saying? Men were forced out of the home in the 70s. You know, they were kicked out of the homes. The drug epidemic, all of these different things that removed the family stability between a man and a woman within our community has been shot.
Right.
And so now when people try to come together, you know, it's sad because a man can't always be emotional and vulnerable with the woman that he's with, because he fears that she's going to see that as a sign of weakness. Or we can't do that with our children, you know. And I teach my, you know, it's funny because I'm going to bring my husband up, and I hope he's not mad while he's watching, but I'm going to bring him up. I love you. I can even say that personally, I've watched my own husband struggle with vulnerability and his ability to be emotional.
Right.
And I can recall how that has hit us in certain parts of our growth within our own relationship.
Right.
But over time, you know, he has been able to get what he needed in order to be able to learn how to do that. And I think he's a completely different individual than he ever was when we first got together, because of that ability and that comfortability and being able to do that. And I think that men who have sons, it is very important for our Black men to show their sons that they can be emotional and be vulnerable and still be able to be masculine. That this is a part of masculinity. You can't have a healthy relationship with anyone if you can't have true intimacy with them. And in order to have true intimacy, you have to be able to be vulnerable, and you have to be able to be emotional. But I think that there is a safe haven that needs to happen within relationships for people to feel safe enough to want to disclose those things. Even on a friendship level, right? Even if you just want to call your homeboy, it's like, I can't talk to you about it, but I can talk to him about it. You know what I'm saying? It's a safe haven.
Right.
So it's identifying what relationships are healthy, that we can really bear some things so that we can work through them. And I think that if everybody in our community did some research on just different topics of trauma or depression, anxiety, PTSD, even narcissistic personality disorder is at an all-time rise because of trauma. People don't want to be themselves. They want to be somebody else all the time. Like, we've got to learn how to get healthy so that we can raise a healthy next generation.
Right.
Because as much as I love the 90s, as much as I love my generation, there was a lot of dysfunction that was happening at that time. And I think there's a lot of damage that happened in that era that a lot of people don't talk about. And I don't think it's just, and I don't, that's why I said, I just don't, you know, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. It doesn't just have to be physical or mental, emotional abuse. Trauma can be being a 6-7-year-old child walking past the living room and there's pornography on the TV.
Right.
That's a first sexual image. That can be traumatizing.
Right.
You know, watching your parents use drugs can be traumatizing. You know, watching something, you know, that's extremely graphic or violent, or seeing someone dead at a certain age is traumatizing.
Right.
But we all don't respond to trauma the same way. You know, some of us can grow up. We may have a little dysfunction here or there, but it may not be as bad as someone else's trauma.
Right.
Some traumas, people want to use drugs. They need the alcohol. They need the sex. They need everything in their lives to just block it out because they just can't handle it. Right. And then you get to an age where you're so used to blocking and coping destructively that you don't even know the first thing about change.
Right.
And the older we get, the likelihood of change becomes less and less.
Right.
We usually say after 40, it's really, really hard to want to make that change, because now these things have become lifelong habits, you don't even know the first thing about undoing those.
Right. Right.
So I do think that we have to set the standard, that we have to get healthy, and we have to cope healthy, and we have to talk to our kids about things. And that's one thing that I try to do with my kids. And I know they watching, but I talk them to death. I know I talk them to death. And I know they be like, Lord Jesus, she's talking me to death. I'm not going to set you up for failure. And I'm not going to sugarcoat the world with you, because the world don't care about you.
The world not going to play.
The world not going to care about you. And I need you to have this, every ounce of knowledge, every ounce of anything that I know, I need you to have that. At age appropriateness, I'm going to start giving you these jewels because you need it. And another thing is too, is that a lot of it is spiritual warfare.
Right. Right.
You know, people don't want to get into that, you know, so, but it's spiritual warfare. You know, the devil wants you broken. He wants you traumatized. He wants you to self-destruct.
That's right.
We got to rise above that. And I do believe with the right education, with the right therapy, with the right help, you know, you can start to make some turnaround. But I also believe that God is the answer to all things.
Amen to that. Amen.
You know, he is the healer of all things. So yeah, you got to start talking to your kids, and you got to find a way to talk about what it is that you're going through, so that you can find a way to relieve that emotional burden or that mental burden that is constantly casting you, so that you don't feel the need to self-sabotage.
True indeed. And as you said a lot right there. That's very powerful. And one thing that I could say, you said having a safe haven.
Yes.
And one thing that I could say about your husband is he knew me before. He's seen me on my highs. He's seen me on my lows. One thing that I could say about him, he wants the best for everybody he cares about.
Yes.
He'll give me the hard truth. He'll say, Sion, yo, he gonna call me cute. He not, first of all, he don't care nothing about no Sion. Yo, cute, yo, you tripping. You know what I'm saying? But it's like one thing about him. He's honest and he cares. And
all the time.
And one thing that I love about you, this is, you know, how you rub off on people.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm saying people, period. We rub off on the people we're around. Yes. So this is a testament to you. Since y'all have been together, his mindset is on a whole nother playing field. Family. It's like, yo, when it comes to like, yo, that negative stuff, he don't want to be around it. And I respect him because, like you said, when it's like we're being vulnerable and we're talking to people, you don't want a yes man. No. You want people that's going to give you honest feedback and truth. Yes. And the thing is that I respect about you is since he's been with you, I see a better Cruz. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know the whole story. I don't know. I don't want to know those stories. But what I see is a better Cruz, an improved Cruz, mentally sharp. So I know the advice that you're giving on the show.
Right.
Y'all have these conversations because you've seen him go through. We all, as men, go through our trauma. Some of the traumas that I went through, he was there for. So he went through traumas as well. But what I'm saying is, he's in a victor state more than a victim state. And he pulls his brothers up, right?
He does. And you know, it's funny that you say that because I won't get into all of that, but I know, you know, one thing that I didn't disclose is that, you know, I was married before and my first husband used to beat me. I'm talking about bad. Like it was a nightmare. It was really a nightmare. And I know that when me and Cruz got together, we came in with some traumas.
Right.
And so it has been an amazing journey to have a friend. Because I think our friendship is just this, it's the most amazing thing I think I've ever had with anyone. But that friendship has really carried us a long way with that safe haven. and that trustability to be able to talk about things and to be honest with each other and to be able to have to do that all the time. Because sometimes he tells me things I don't want to hear. I'm like, I ain't trying to hear all that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So, but it is a blessing because I get to see him in a different light.
Right.
To be vulnerable, to be emotional, to really just, speak what's on his heart and mind. I remember when he first started, going through the process of becoming that, I used to look and be like, well, hold on, what did you just say? Or
Wow.
How do you feel? So it catches you off guard.
Right.
But that's, I tell everybody who wants to be in a successful marriage or a successful relationship.
Right.
Number one thing that is most important is you got to be a healthy individual. And I shout out to RC Blake's on YouTube. I don't know if anybody follows him, watches his channels or what, but he's a pastor. He has a really cool way of bringing, the Bible to everyday life. And he just did a series on a healthy woman, a toxic woman, and a broken woman. And he also did that same topic for men.
Right.
But the only part that he was missing is the trauma aspect. And I'm just going to say right quick that trauma in relationships, it don't work. It don't work because a lot of times when we're traumatized and we're going through a certain thing in our lives and we're in a very, unhealthy place and we're self-destructing, we're hanging around people that are also self-destructing. So now we all on this bandwagon together, self-destructing. We all trying to, we talk good, but we all self-destructing. Whether it's you using drugs, you an alcoholic, whatever it is, everybody self-destructing together. There is no way to climb up out of that. And you have got to be healthy to be in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? You have to be. I appreciate you, Rob. I appreciate you. I got you back.
We got his back, yo. That's a fact right there. Hot Rob, yo. We definitely love you, bro.
That's my people's right there. But you have to be healthy because two broken people can't fix each other. But a lot of times a broken person wants to be with another broken person because trying to fix that broken person, they think they're fixing themselves, but they're really not. Because when that person reaches a certain level, then the insecurities come in. Now it's like, oh, I fixed you and you left. It's like, well, they see that this ain't gonna work.
Right.
You got to be healthy because you just can't have successful relationships, interactions with people when you are not healthy. And being healthy means that you understand who you are. You're not afraid to go against the grain if going against the grain, because you ain't following society.
Right. You can't.
You're not keeping up with everybody else. You're doing what skips to your beat, what God has your purpose designed for you to do. But you're also better to pick out, your boundaries, your standards, all that stuff is kind of set in stone when you're healthy. When you're broken and you got trauma baggage that you're just carrying, it just does not get better in your life.
Right.
It doesn't get better until you really start to address it. And you're going to have to go through some hurt. You're going to have to go through the pain of really having to talk about that experience, relive that experience. But I promise you, with the right help, you'll get there. You just got to be willing to do the work. But I tell people that all the time. But if you're not going to do the work, you can't sit here and be in the space that you're in and constantly, talk about things that you're never going to make the conscious decision to fix, if you can fix it,
Right. Nah, that's a fact right there. And it's like being sick and tired of being sick.
Yeah.
You gotta come. Yeah. So it's like, once you get to the end of your rope and it's like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to keep hurting. I don't want to keep hurting other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the different areas of trauma because there's so many. You don't have to talk about all of them.
Okay.
But let's just talk about how serious this thing is because people think, well, I've never been through that. And they think, well, I've never been through that. You know how people we get,
Mm-hmm.
that never happened to me. Well, that's your life. That's you. I didn't go through that. But we all go through traumas.
Yes.
So let's talk on the different types of trauma There is. For the ones that may say, well, I've never been through that. I never was abused. I have a good relationship. But you're still overcompensating for something that
Right.
you didn't have. Let's talk about it.
So first I'll hit that, I'll get that, but I'm gonna break it down first. So you really have three types of trauma, which is acute, chronic, and complex traumas. Now, your acute trauma is a one-time event. So let's just say we can throw, maybe watching, somebody get killed. It could be a death. It's a one-time incident.
Right.
Your chronic trauma is something that you're exposed to for long periods of time. So my veterans out there would really, they may fall in this chronic line, being hit by IEDs and constantly having to go out on the road. Constantly being in that war zone, you're exposed to that trauma for an induced period of time. And then you have your chronic trauma, your complex trauma, which is something that is reoccurring. So we would say, again, like molestation, ages of maybe 5 to 12, or, a long exposure period. But trauma, you're right about that when you said that people are like, oh, that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
We all have some level of trauma. I don't know not one person that I've ever worked with in this field that does not have some level of trauma. Right. But I think what people say is it doesn't affect me because how we respond to trauma is different. Exactly. So I could, for an example, if I'm raped at 12 and someone else is raped at 12, we had the same experience, but how we responded mentally and emotionally after the fact may be very, very different.
Right.
So it's how we respond to trauma that is different. So people say, oh, well, I'm not affected. Well, I can tell you're affected by your behavior. Because what happens is when we don't deal with trauma, right? You say we're lashing out, we're showing out, we're drinking, we're wild, and we're doing all these things. That's coming through the subconscious mind.
Right.
The subconscious mind is a powerful thing. And that thing, boy, is where a lot of our behaviors stem from. A lot of the things that we've learned that we don't even pay attention to, it feeds right back into that front.
Right.
And we're mirroring that. So, prime example, somebody who yells a lot, who's angry all the time.
Right.
Why? Is it a trauma there? Did somebody do something to you? Were you verbally abused? Were you emotionally abused? Why are you always so defensive? That's a trauma. Because we naturally don't feel the need to be defensive. Right. So I think people get it confused where it has to be either sexual or physical abuse or domestic violence, or you have to be a war veteran who's been in PTSD, who has PTSD,
right,
to say, oh, well, you have trauma. No, again, ideology, passing it down, generation to generation. What about, I worked with a woman in prison who was racist. Boy, that was something. That was something for me. But she ended up making such wonderful progress. Wonderful progress. And when I left, I think it was kind of emotional for both of us because I'd really seen her grow. And she was a lifer. But she would talk to me about the ideology that her parents had put on her and the fear that she had of Black people because of the experiences that her parents had told her about.
Right.
So her trauma about a race of people was because somebody else had told her something that she personally had never even experienced.
Wow.
It's just like when I see the racial prejudiceness, right?
Right.
The victimization of police brutality against, young Black males. Why is that the perception? The stereotype has gotten you heightened in fear.
Right.
Now you're traumatized to a certain level where you feel the need to have to use force when you are around a certain group of people.
Right.
So trauma is not as basic and clear cut as some people would like to make it seem. We can be traumatized in a relationship with someone. Somebody cheats on us, calls us ugly, tells us we fat. That's trauma.
Right.
Now you are insecure about yourself. You know, you out here getting all these butt injections and boob jobs. And I'm not trying to attack my women when I say that.
Right.
But what about you feels so unhappy with what God gave you that you needed to go and change that?
Right.
Who told you that was something wrong with you? So something happened that was traumatizing enough to make you feel insecure about it, that you need to go ahead and you need to fix it.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So I think trauma comes in so many different forms of fashions, and we just don't take the time to look at it. So I'm a firm believer now that I always have to address something when it happens in my life.
Right.
Because I know what unresolved trauma looks like. I know what that did to me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I know my personal story. I'm not going to keep going through that. So now I have to address it as it happens. I need to process that, you know, so that way I can continue to be healthy.
Right.
Because being unhealthy and being broken and feeling damaged just robs you of the life that you really could have.
Right.
And I see the world differently now, you know, and it's funny because sometimes I'm with my friends and I'll say something and they'll try to say, oh girl, well, but I'm like, I feel bad. And they're like, well, why do you feel bad? And I'm like, because it's trauma, you know, and they're like,
right.
Everything's not trauma. But I'm like,
everything is.
Wouldn't have a mental health system if there was no trauma.
Right.
Trauma is the basic core foundation for a lot of our mental health issues. Now, when we're talking about psychotic issues, that's a whole nother conversation. Your schizophrenia, your bipolars, that's a different conversation. But usually a traumatic event will happen that will trigger the chemical release to onset those psychotic disorders. But your depression, your narcissistic personality disorder, your antisocial personality disorder, gender dysphoria. And I'm sorry, for all the women and men out there that may be in same-sex relationships. I'm not bashing you. I'm not trying to come for you. But a lot of times those relationships form because of some kind of trauma.
Right.
If I'm going to keep it 100, I'm just going to keep it 100,
You got to keep
That's
it 100.
just what it is. That's just what it is.
Right.
R. Kelly's fetish with young girls, him being a pedophile, is not only a result of his own trauma, but his inability to develop appropriately, cognitively, for him to have healthy relationships with adult women.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So trauma. And it's sad because he's going to probably do the rest of his life in prison because of trauma that his mother failed to get him some help for. And that's why we in the community, we got to stop sweeping stuff under the rug.
We got to stop sweeping it under the rug. Healthy communication and being honest and being real.
Yeah.
Because we all going through it. So let me ask you, with social media, we were talking about the body shaming and stuff like that earlier with the girls and it ain't just females, but I'm going to use women for this situation. So they say, okay, the big butts and ... So now girls, she may not have the body that a lot of these Instagram that they're saying is beautiful. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about social media, the influence and how that causes trauma on people.
I hope you read it because this topic right here, it kind of makes my blood boil because I just wish that we didn't have all this stuff. I mean, we grew up in a time where we didn't have this. Right. And I thank God. Like my kids asked me the other day, they said, if you could have grew up in my generation or your generation, I go back to where I was at. I go back to where I was at, Right. But I think about that. I think about the 90s when this conversation comes up, because I remember Black women who didn't have fat asses like that. Excuse my language, but they didn't have fat asses like that. Buns of Steel was in. Everybody was trying to have a Buns of Steel, but there were some women that were naturally voluptuous. But I don't really remember body image being such a heightened thing at that time.
Right.
And I really do kind of blame the access to so much stuff, right? Because now your celebrities and your influencers all have an access to your home.
Right.
They have an access to your home. Hey girl, I see you. And you're right, and we were happy too, honey.
That's right. That's a fact.
But now they have access to your home and they have access to your mind, right?
Right.
So to answer your question, I'm going to try to do this in a manner where I don't get too deep off into it, but we are impressionable as people.
Right.
Right? Because naturally on our social hierarchy, according to Maslow's social hierarchy, we want to belong, be accepted, and to be loved are the three top things on the hierarchy. Right. We need those things. Lets us know that we are social beings. God designed us to be social. We were not made to be isolated and be alone.
Right.
But I think you have a lot of factors that play into that. Okay. So I think about music back then. Music was very different. Like R&B music was very different. You know what I'm saying?
Very different. Right.
And it promoted love in a different kind of way. We kind of handled certain things a little differently. Now today you got your women, you know, your Cardi B, your Megan Thee Stallion, even Nicki Minaj. Like right. These women are overly sexualized. I mean, Lil' Kim was overly sexualized for the time. You know, Foxy Brown was a little over sexualized for the time, but it wasn't a mass saturation of it because you had so many different types of artists that you didn't just listen to Lil' Kim. You know, you might have had some MC Light, you know, and some Queen Latifah, and you know, so you didn't have just that one image, that one influence.
Right.
But I think about now is that sex sells everything, and we really do have a perverted spirit of sexuality going on in the world today. Like sex is just everywhere. It's everything. It's like everybody's doing it. Doesn't matter. You know, we're all just coming together, and it's just like this. It's just a cesspool.
Right.
But I think about the over sexualization that the industry promotes on women. Right.
Right.
So you got your Beyonce, you got your Nicki Minaj, you got your Cardi B, you got your Meg Thee Stallion. Every time you see them, you know, music videos, less clothes. You know, they talking about what? They talking about, you know, everything is sex, 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 sex. And I think that in social media world where you can actually keep up with these people,
right?
You see these images all the time. This is how they look. And you're thinking about the men that like what they see.
Right.
But see, women don't actually realize that men like women. They like what they see and they will play with you. Right. But they're not going to be with you.
That's the difference.
There's a difference. And not saying that that's even a healthy thing because that's really not healthy in itself. But we have sent the message to women that you need to look this way because this is what men want. This is what sells. This is what's gonna get you somewhere. But I tell all my girlfriends, ain't none of them Instagram girls married.
No.
Because if they was married, I don't know, now husband is gonna let them be on Instagram looking like they looking with these OnlyFans pages, doing whatever they doing on these OnlyFans pages.
Right.
You know, but we're promoting insecurity. The makeup industry is $1 billion business to tell you that you need to wear makeup.
Right.
That you're not pretty enough without makeup. You know, the hair industry coming from China and India, you know, and I'm not knocking my girls, you know, we get our hair done.
Right.
But we don't know, you don't know what nobody's praying over this hair and nothing like that. But it is no, you top now you know better than to say that was wings and pizza. I ain't got time for you. I got time for your mess. But we're so quick to want to change how we look. Right. And what bothers me the most is that it's our community of women that feel the need to change so much. It's like they're constantly targeting our insecurities.
Right.
You know, you need to look like this. You need to dress like this. You need to have this body type. Social media, half them people on social media don't look like that.
They don't.
You know, but we're so marketed against, and women stay on that. They stay on there looking around. I need to get this done and I need to get this done. And if I just lose some weight here and I just,
right.
My question becomes is what about you do you dislike?
Right.
You know, if you can answer that with a real justification, then we can have a real conversation about it.
Right.
But if you just want if you want to be like everybody else, then you just aren't secure enough in yourself to be able to say, you know what? Because I'm going to tell you, I don't wear makeup.
Right.
And my husband know I don't wear makeup. It ain't happening.
Right.
You know, but if my husband was like, you know, if you don't do this and you don't do that, we're not, well, then we ain't going to be together. You know what I'm saying?
No, I feel you got to be a standard. It's got to be a standard. Right.
You have to become, how can I ask somebody to love me and see me if I don't love and see myself?
Right.
If I'm going to go with every trend, every which way the wind blows, then that lets people know that I don't have an identity, right, that I'm chasing the identity the world is trying to assign to me. And that is trauma. And these women feel trauma because I hear it. You know, I hear it. Right. Working in the industry, you know, working with the clients that I work with, I would hear insecurities about women and their men. You know, he's cheating on me. She looked like this. She looked like that. You know, stop measuring yourself to somebody else because we always want to get in the realm of what we think somebody looks like. Right. And I say people cheat for a lot of different reasons. It ain't always got to be what we think that it is, you know, but sometimes, right, you know, people just like other people. And women, we really got to set our own standard. I tell women, if you set the standard, the men would change. The men would change to meet that standard because men innately, just like women, want to be in a relationship.
Right. That's facts. That's definitely a fact.
But if women don't see the need to change their behavior and to be women, then men are only going to do what these women allow them to do. Right. And that's continue to traumatize them all over with because they traumatize themselves. Right.
No, that's true. So let's talk about the power of influence. We got social media. We're talking about social media. Mm-hmm. We brought up the music. So let's take like the Cardi B's and I don't cook, I don't clean and da. So now the city girl movement and all these women that's like, yo, we run the world. It's like, yo, the man, now they're gonna flip. We're gonna be real. Okay. They're gonna flip the roles now. The women, we don't need a man for nothing. Da. Now you got all these women running around who they're demasculating the men. Mm-hmm. You know, and like you said, a lot of these Instagram people, when they're up there, they're not in relationships though, but they're very influential to the girl at the job, to the girl that's in your neighborhood, to the girl that's even you're in a relationship with. These people are influential over them, but they're not in a relationship.
No.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Okay.
Now, say I'm in a relationship. Let's say I'm in a relationship. My girl, she may be following her favorite celebrity.
Okay.
Right. And they're doing this. So now she's measuring our relationship based on their social media.
Yes.
But see, the thing with social media, because I'm a public image,
yes,
people only see what I want them to see.
That's right.
So it's like if the hair ain't cut, we ain't doing no pictures. If the grays is showing, we don't go live. You know what I'm saying? If the car break down, we cut the camera for that. You know what I'm saying? So they just see,
right?
They just see that side. So now you have people that literally compare their relationships to these other people. Well, he just brought her a Birkin bag that cost $20,000, but they don't tell you about the fact he just hit up beside her head last week. They don't say about the 3 or 4 girls that he's cheating with.
Right.
Comparing yourself to celebrities, where in your relationship to theirs. Let's talk about the traumas and the insecurities that bring that and how dangerous that could be to relationships.
That's highly detrimental. Highly, highly detrimental to all relationships anywhere. Right. Women, we're more emotionally driven, bless our hearts, you know, and that's why men and women are so different and why we have such a great balance with each other. It's because men are more rational and analytical than women are. We're so emotional. And right. We do. A lot of times we take what we see as fact. Right? Because you got to think about all the reality shows that had been spiraling to this point, right? So you keeping up with the Kardashians and, you know, you love it hip hops and all of that have kind of preached a lifestyle.
Right.
They preached a lifestyle. So women think now, women and men alike, right?
Right.
It's about the image. I don't think a lot of people really understand what a healthy relationship again looks like.
Right.
But we want the image. So you want the success, you want the money, you want to look like you got the money, you want access to everything that you can have access to, because you want to show other people that you got it. See, social media is the greatest place to mask your insecurities. You can be whoever you want to be on social media.
Right.
And a lot of times that's exactly what they're doing. Because I was looking, and it's funny that you brought this up, because I was looking and I had said something to Cruz the other day about it.
Right.
We was watching something. It was a video or something. And I was like, man, they in this big, this big house.
Right.
I said, but the house is empty.
Right.
House is just empty, right? And he was like, it's promoting the lifestyle.
Right.
They're minimalists all of a sudden. We got the big houses, but we're minimalists. No, you can't afford to put nothing in the house.
Can't afford to put nothing in it.
But you want to showcase that you got the house.
Right.
You want to showcase that you got the bag, because everything is about getting that coin.
Right.
You keep up with trends if you want to. You're going to find that it is a bottomless pit. Those people are trying to fill a void for themselves, and they think that materialism is going to fill that emptiness that they feel, when really it's not. So they can't get enough of it. So that's why people are on social media, want thousands of likes, and post the things that they post, because they get the gratification of feeling whole because somebody else is validating them.
Right.
So we're constantly in this realm where social media is just really feeding somebody else's insecurity. You're just hyping them up, and it kind of makes me feel a certain kind of way, because I feel like, are people not really paying attention? Like,
right.
We know Kim Kardashian is our main.
Right.
We know what Kim Kardashian looked like in the 90s.
Right. Right.
Kim Kardashian looked like a black girl today.
Right.
What kind of insecurities did she have to have 100+ surgeries to look like she looked?
Right. Wow.
So you're feeding into supporting someone else's validation and their insecurities based on whatever traumas they have. And in the process, you're digging yourself a hole into trauma, because you don't look like and you don't have what they should have.
Right.
Or like you said, seeing these men, he bought her a Birkin bag, but you ain't buying me no Birkin bag.
Right.
You got a house, you got a roof over your head, you got food in your mouth, we go on vacation, you ain't wanting for nothing. Why does it have to, what does the Birkin bag signify for that individual? What does it mean? It's just like the Jordans. What does it mean?
Right.
What is if it's about status, then you're always going to be chasing, and you're always going to find yourself in a situation where you're constantly disappointed.
Right.
So I tell people, don't pay attention to other people's relationships, because Cardi B got a Birkin bag. Cardi B got a car, but how many women has Offset been with?
Right.
And does that outweigh the odds? You know what I'm saying? Does that justify that? So you potentially getting herpes or HIV,
right?
It's okay because you got a Birkin bag.
No, that's real. That is real right there. So let's stay on social media real quick, because social media is out of control. Rob, they're probably gonna laugh when I say this. Rob and Cruz, if you can hear them, they're probably gonna bust out, because we used to say this in the 90s. Wu-Tang Clan has messed up the world. Social media nowadays has turned the world out. Social media. And when I say that, let's talk about now the social media. They're overcompensating for everything. So I want to talk about the youth now.
Yes.
So now they're perpetuating a lifestyle.
Yes.
That's ending kids in prison, the grave, women into the strip clubs. No disrespect to the dancers.
Right.
Women into promiscuity. Because we don't know who we are. Like you said, chasing a trend now. We're grown. We're grown.
Yep.
These younger ones, this is becoming their norm.
Yeah.
So to what's unnormal to us, they've become desensitized. And that's a trauma in itself.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the effects of it. And how can we, as a people in our community, break that cycle?
With our children? How do we protect our children?
Right.
Well, first of all, we as parents, TV, phones are not here to raise your children. Okay? That's number one. I used to tell parents all the time, it is not your child's God-given right to have a cell phone.
Right.
But the problem is the parents are unhealthy to begin with. Because a healthy parent is constantly checking on their child.
Right.
A healthy parent is constantly, what are you looking at? No, ma'am. They probably got things blocked on their phones. You can't access this. I know my children have it. I can go in and see what you looked at.
Right.
I can see where you spent your time. You spent 4 hours on Instagram. You spent 2 hours. I can go in and see. And I think that as parents, we got to protect our children because our children are going to be way more sexualized, have way more traumas than we will have because of what they're exposed to.
Right.
So social media shouldn't even be something that we're giving our kids until our kids are the cognitive age to be able to really handle what social media is about and really explaining to them why social media platforms can be beneficial, but also where they can be harmful at.
Right.
But a lifestyle is being promoted. And it's kind of sad because I think about it. I was, and it's funny because me and Cruz were just talking about this not too long ago. I was talking about, the 90s was this and the 90s was that, music was so real and da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, but I can remember when No Limit really started to change that for us.
Right.
And I can't think of the song that they did, but I remember the video. They had like the Gucci Ferraris and all of that in it. And I remember it being like a really different exposure to my mind. Like, because that's not what I know the 90s to be about. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like we're ushering into a new evolution of music.
Right.
Music is really truly the biggest influence in the world. I don't care what nobody say. Music is the influence. Hip hop don't belong to us. Hip hop belong to the world. Like it's in commercials, it's everywhere. If you put it in the music makes it golden. You know what I'm saying? That is the rule. Like you said, you talking about WAP. You talking about I don't cook, I don't clean. Them women is living that like the WAP is the Bible.
Right.
All I gotta do is have some good and it's gonna be all gravy for the rest of my life.
No. But that's right.
But materialism is a bad thing because it teaches, it teaches our children, already we're consumerism country. All we do is buy and consume. They play off of every single insecurity that we have.
Right.
For us to buy products. The more you buy, the more in debt you become.
The more in debt.
It makes you a slave to the financial system. It makes you a slave to your insecurities. It makes you broken. Your kids being on social media, what it teaches them is it teaches them to have insecurities early.
Early. Depressed.
Little girls looking at these girls like, I don't look like that. Boys looking like, I don't look like that. I'm not into that.
Right.
Well, you gotta be if you want to be it. But it just blows my mind that we don't, as adults, some of us don't have the cognitive ability to be able to see what is purely unhealthy right in front of our faces.
Right.
And again, I blame a lot of this on spiritual warfare too. Right. I believe they want the children. They don't want my generation. When my generation were too old, they want the children.
Right.
This is the age where we can, and even think about it. It even starts as far as Disney, right? And any of the women in here that are my age who grew up watching Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and all those things, it kind of put it in our mind that we're a princess.
Right.
And I should be treated as A, B, C, and D.
Right.
It's a false perception of what is really going to happen in life. If you can go on social media and look at it for entertainment purposes, and be able to walk away from it, then you're okay. But if you go on social media and you're comparing yourself to everybody else and your lifestyle to everybody else, or you're letting your children see things that they shouldn't be seeing, and then they start to develop insecurities, you need to really start questioning yourself, like, what is it about myself that I need to fix before I start entertaining or allowing myself to be entertained by things that are going to have this kind of an effect on me.
Right. Nah, that's very real. That's very real. I got 4 subjects, and I want you to tie them into trauma.
Okay.
You know, it's 2 for the guys, and it's 2 for the women.
Okay.
Okay, for the males, gangs, prison. For the women, sexuality, OnlyFans.
Okay. So we'll start with the men. You said gangs and prison.
Right.
Gangs are really about the father trauma.
Right.
It's the lack of a father and the trauma that is provided with not having an identity. You know, I look at my sons and I look at them and I see how much they are like their father, or in ways that they want to be like their father. And I think that is natural, right? Children inspired to want to be somewhat like their parents. You know, that is the image that they see. That is who they look like. I can identify with that, right?
Right.
So for males to not have that image, there is a sense of there is a lack of identity. I can't identify with a part of who I am because that part is missing. So gangs are easy for young males to get involved with because it gives them a sense of purpose, a sense of identity that they're not getting from their father.
Right.
They get the validation of praise through criminal activity that they would get from their father if they were doing, you know, positive things, or chastised if they were doing negative things. The gang still reinforces that positive behavior when things go great, you know, positive reinforcement. There's a repercussion when things don't go right. You know what I'm saying? So it's that same model of reinforcement. But they need an identity. And without a father, a mother can raise a boy. And I know a lot of single women out here who have raised sons and have done the best job that they could have done. You know, they try to do and be everything for their sons as they can be. But the best thing that I tell them is to find a healthy, positive male role model for that boy, because you can't teach him how to be a man.
Right.
You will never have nothing that swings between your legs. You know what I'm saying? You will never identify or think on the level that a man does. All men need a healthy male role model.
Right.
So men are very critical. They're a very critical key component in our culture that is missing, just period. We need our men. We need our men. We need our Black men, and we need them to be strong, and we need them to stand up, and we need them to educate. But in gangs, those boys are looking for that figure.
Right.
Instead, they get a brotherhood. They get protection. They get validation. They get respect. They have reinforcement. It does everything that a father can't do, because he's not there.
Right.
And what we fail to realize is, kids, if I can't get positive attention, I will do everything to get negative attention, because attention is attention, no matter if it's positive or negative. And if I can't get positive, I sure will take negative. Right. So now that behavior of that gang life transfers to that prison life.
Right.
And now we have a population, especially here in North Carolina. I was floored by the population numbers of Black men sitting behind bars. Right. It is profiling. Some of them crimes they did do, but some of them crimes that they did, you know, they got these recurring small crimes, but Carolina works on a point system. Right. So you get X amount of points, X amount of time. And then the rehabilitation in the prison here is just a joke. I will be honest with that. I loved my job at the prison, but I worked on a residential unit in the prison.
Right.
So I had access to the people who had the inmates who had access to me had a benefit that the rest of the prisoners and that entire population didn't get that benefit of, which I think is really sad. But prison becomes an in and out thing because it's still a brotherhood. If I'm in a gang and I go to prison, I'm still covered under the gang.
Right.
I'm still a part of that. And the likelihood of them having other people inside of the prison that are equally a part of that gang, you're still a part of that brotherhood.
Right.
Do I see that they are? I have worked with some men who are very shattered by the life that they've lived.
Right.
But they don't know nothing different.
Right. Right.
So if I'm 30, 40 years old and I've been doing this my whole life,
all I know.
This is all I know. What do I go home to? How do I change that? The community is not, even in our own community, we're not as accepting as we should be to rehabilitation of our own people.
Right.
That's why gentrification blows my mind.
Wow.
Because we successful middle class or upper class Black people, right? African Americans, however you want to classify it, we're still not as accepting of the rehabilitation of our own people. So if we're not going to be open to the rehabilitation of our own people, nobody else is going to be open to the rehabilitation of our own people. That cycle just continues to continue to perpetuate over and over and over again.
Right.
But that gang life is usually a direct trauma of a lack of a father in their lives.
I agree.
Because boys need to have the identity of who they can look up to. And it's best done when they can look up to someone who looks just like them. That's why your son wants to be you. It doesn't matter if it's you in a negative light. It's being like my father. I look like my father. This is my father. This is my image.
Right. Wow.
So you can see how powerful that is, even if he wants to emulate a negative version of you.
Right.
But it's the image of you. It's the self-identity he gets when he looks at you.
Wow.
So if you remove that,
right,
it's a victim to the streets and brotherhood where they can get it.
Right.
And the validation, even if it is through criminal behavior.
Wow. That's deep right there. That's deep.
And then you asked me about what was the other one?
We was just flipping the script on the women this time. So we were talking about sexuality, manipulation, which leads to the OnlyFans. When I say OnlyFans, I would say like stripping, and then even with the human trafficking, let's put all that in there, prostitution, abuse, all in there. All right.
So are we asking how women get this far?
How do they get that far, and how do they get that far? A lot of that is through traumas and right.
So women, again, we're very emotional creatures, and we learn nurture from our mothers, right?
Right.
So number one, women need that balance. Women show us how to be women. Okay, so I don't know what some of these women's households are like, right?
Right.
But we learn womanhood from our mothers, our aunties, our older cousins. We kind of see that image of womanhood within our families and within our own communities. Fathers play a major role in a woman's life because he teaches a woman, whether you know it or not, about her value.
Wow.
A father instills a woman's value into her. And I find this to be so unique. And the reason I do is because it's almost like God's innate design.
Right.
Because the Bible says it's God, then it's the husband, then it's the wife, then it's the children, right?
Right.
God has already made man the head.
Right.
Right. So if he's the head, you already know that a lot of things in life are going to come of the stability of our fathers.
Right.
And that's what blows my mind when I hear women say some of the things that they say is you'll never be able to have the responsibility that God has put on a man on this earth and his role in the earth and within his own family. So girls who grow up without fathers don't have that. They don't have that first daddy daughter date. You know, that first man to tell you that he loves you and that you're gorgeous and supports you in everything that you do. That man that uplifts you, that gives you that image.
Right.
Women want to be with men that are like their fathers. You know, your father is supposed to be a woman, a little girl's first love.
Correct.
That's the man that gives you all of that. You know, I remember my father telling me, you know, just because somebody smiles in your face don't mean that you gotta like that boy, don't mean that you gotta kiss that boy, don't mean that you gotta, you know.
Right.
So your father puts those things into you. Your father is the one that teaches you about what a respectable young woman looks like, right? Especially if you're in a household where you have your mother and your father together. I think those children have a tendency to turn out a little more well-rounded. Not saying that children that grow up in single parent households are not well-rounded, but there's more of a well-roundedness because they have the nurture, and then they have the stability of, you know, the disciplinary who's also rational and analytical and more logical. So there's that balance that those two things kind of cultivate. So women need that. Little girls need that from their fathers. They need that I love you, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. And they need that continuously as they transition from early, you know, young woman into their adolescent years when they're starting to change.
Definitely.
Daddy is the protector. That's what daddy does. You know, so your first date, your first boyfriend, daddy's there, he's vetting it out. You know, you might get upset with daddy, but daddy's got your best interest at heart. And a lot of times that will go to show as time grows up. So we call that the father wound. When the father's not there, it's really a father wound.
Wow.
So for girls who don't have fathers, want that male approval, a lot of times, you know, I like to say to women, men can smell a weakness about you sometimes that you just will never understand. It's like they can sniff the insecurity a mile away. Like, I lied to you not. Y'all can sniff it, y'all can smell it.
Right.
And men will take advantage of that because they don't have to do much to get in between your legs.
Right.
It could be taking you out to dinner one time. It could be telling you that you're beautiful, chat you up real good on the phone, make you hear things and tell you things that maybe you haven't heard. Right. That makes you feel emotionally connected, because women are all about the emotional connection.
Right.
So if I can make you feel certain things, then I can get into this box.
Right.
But you think, and she'll think that there's closeness, but there's not going to be any.
Nope.
There's not going to be anything good at the end of that tunnel, but heartbreak, more insecurities, you looking at yourself, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently to make him feel this way about me, or to look at me differently, to love me more? It ain't got nothing to do with you.
Right.
But sometimes it does. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with her in the context that she did anything wrong, but it's her insecurities that she needs to work on to really reevaluate and understand herself. But a lot of times when the promiscuous behavior starts to happen,
right,
she's doing this before she's at a cognitive age where she can really start even deciphering, you know, right, what's really going on. Yeah. So I think a lot of women have learned the value of sex and have used it as a tool to get what they want.
Right.
Because it's at this point, it's like, okay, well, if I ain't gonna get no relationship out the deal, right? I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, get this sex so that I can, you know, use this sex so I can get a car, so I can get some money, so I can go to school, so I can, you know, get a bed, I can get my nails, whatever it is that they want in life. Right. Now it's the weapon. It is, I call that the Jazzabell Spirit.
Oh yeah.
You know, and there's men that fall victim to that. And there's good men that have fell victim to that. Right. You know, once a woman becomes kind of accustomed to her sexuality and the power of it, now she knows that it's a weapon.
Right.
And
Right.
she
Put you
knows,
under the spell. She put you
and
under the
she
spell.
knows, right, and she knows what she doing. You just
Right.
see me, girl. I've seen girls that be like, oh, I'm going for him. Like, his
Right.
eyes is locked in. Like,
Got him.
got him. I'm finna come up. You know what I'm saying? So if you're not gonna treat me good, you're not gonna give me what I want out of a relationship. Well, how do I get something that's beneficial to meet my needs? Right. So now sex becomes a way to meet my needs. I still call it prostitution. I don't care how you slice it, the dice. Hell, I say if you marry, you know, my grandfather used to say, you marry her, it's cheaper to keep her. He said, because you're still paying for it. I don't care how you slice it, the dice. You still got to pay bills. You still got to do that, you know. So I still feel like it's a form and a level of itself of prostitution. It is a business transaction that is happening for one person to get one thing, for you to get another thing.
Wow.
But I think underneath it all, those women too feel like their sex is one day going to hook someone.
Right.
And I tell women all the time, I don't care if your pussy shine like 24 karat gold, baby. And I hate to use that word, but your watch shine 24 karat gold. It could be the greatest thing since sunshine.
Right.
It ain't gonna make him be with you.
Wow.
Relationships are about worth. A man will play with you, not saying that he should.
Right.
You know, I'm not condoning that he should. I think men should be more responsible, right, to a certain extent, and let women know, hey, you know, you gotta cover that up. You gotta put some clothes on. Like, you know, you cute and all that, but you got something up here. You need to be working with that. Like this right here. And you know, men are not afraid of women that are trying to give it to them too fast.
Right.
I think men should be afraid of women that are trying to give it to them too fast. I think women should be afraid of men that are trying to give it to them too fast. It's like, hold on, what's the rush? What we, you know what I'm saying? It's the first day. Like, I don't even know you like that.
It'd be the gift
right?
that keep giving. The gift that keeps giving.
The gift, right? The gift that keeps giving. And I find that, you know, women in these OnlyFans, you know, it is sexual enticement. Sex is no longer something that is sacred anymore. It's no longer honored as a way to express love between two people. This thing is just thrown around like it's just loose. Like I saw the commercials for AIDS. You know, you take this pill every day, it'll decrease. If you got AIDS, it'll decrease your risk of being able to give it. And I'm like, we're at this point.
Wow.
You know? So I think women are now using their sex to get what they want.
Right.
But deep down inside, they still really want a relationship.
They do.
But I think a lot of times too, some of these women, see, $500,000 assets. You see what I'm talking about?
Wow.
I think some of these women, you know, they just, I think sometimes they're so broken that they start to believe that this is the only thing that they're ever going to be worthy of doing.
Right.
Like, I've done so much of it, I might as well go all the way because now my image is out there. And that's the sad thing about social media and about internet. Once it's out there, it's out there.
It's out there.
And I think a lot of times, some of the things that they do when they're younger, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, they're like, man, and now it's just out there and I'm trying to change, but somebody keep reminding me. So it's like, you know, but I tell people we all make mistakes. You got to work through that.
Right.
You got to work through that. You know, hey, you know, this is, you know, we're in a day and age where you got to self-forgive and you got to move on, and you'll find somebody that will move on with you, you know, but you got to move on with yourself and get yourself healthy and take time to get rid of some of them soul ties that you've been tied on you, and, you know, get your life together and really evaluate your trauma so that you can have healthy. But I do think that sexuality in women and OnlyFans is really about getting what we want, trying to land somebody, or, you know, it can also be about, you know, trying to trap.
Wow.
You know, we live in a day and age where trapping people is big business.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you got, what's that girl named? Selena Powell.
Wow.
Be dropping all them rappers down. She be dropping dimes on them. Like, so, you know, it's so many different variables that you can attach to a person's psyche after trauma. And it really just takes to sit down and really talk to someone to really kind of figure out where their motive lies, you know?
Right. Wow. And it's so, like you said, it's so big of a spectrum, so
Mm-hmm.
broad of a spectrum when we talk about traumas. So
Yeah.
let's talk about now we identifying the traumas,
Mm-hmm.
now getting free
Mm-hmm.
in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it's ongoing, it never stops. It's like
No.
it's kind of like an addiction. It's
Yes.
like it's always gonna come back around. It's kind of like this test, this was easy.
Mm-hmm.
Next time it might be a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
This one might be overwhelming, but how do you overcome self-care, self-love, sound mind
Mm-hmm.
to get back in a healthy place, to be able to have healthy relationships, whether man and woman, or with your friends, your family,
Mm-hmm.
healthy relationships in a whole. Let's walk through that real quick.
Okay.
Not quick, but I want you to,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When we identify our trauma, we need to identify it. We need to identify that event. We need to identify what it made us feel. We need to be real with ourselves. We need to get into that space where we can be real with ourselves. Because, and I'm just gonna sidebar this, but if you can sleep with someone that you barely know and give them the most intimate part of your body that you can never take back, then you gotta learn to be real with yourself. Because you've already given away what's most vulnerable.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I tell people that if you can do that, then you can go ahead and get real with yourself.
Right.
But you've got to be real with yourself. You got to be able to say, you know what, I was sexually assaulted, or I was a victim of domestic violence, or my mother used to beat me, or my father used to beat me, or my mother was a raging alcoholic, and constantly did verbal abuse, or that you just got to get to the point where you're able to identify what that traumatic event was and how it made you feel. You also got to be real about the fact that traumatic event has altered your perception about how you interact with people moving forward in your life, or has affected how you've handled people in your life.
Right.
Now, the second step is I got to get some help. I got to talk to somebody. And I like to tell people mental health, the one thing about therapy is it's confidential. It is a safe haven for you to go in there and say whatever is on your heart and mind about whatever is on your heart and mind. And except for, you want to hurt yourself or somebody else, we're mandated reporters. We got to tell somebody that.
Right.
But other than that, it is a safe haven for you to really address some things. Now, for children who have trauma and parents who are looking to get their children into trauma therapy, there are a lot of therapists who primarily specialize solely in childhood trauma. And a lot of times they'll have a lot of accolades, extra certificates to, just for this specific thing. And when I lived in Tennessee, there was a woman who specifically only dealt with childhood trauma. I mean, she would be booked up. She was one of the best in the state.
Right.
But people would line their children up months out in advance just to be able to get in and see her.
Right.
So there are parents in the world that are trying to get their children help. There are people in this world who have been traumatized, who understand what trauma does, and are trying to help their children before their children experience what they have experienced. So I would say you need to find a therapist, if it's a child, to identify that childhood trauma, because they do it in such a delicate manner, in such a wonderful way that children don't even really know that they're really starting to deal with the trauma, which is so cool because it's just handled so differently. Versus us as adults, it's CBT therapy. You got to go get some cognitive behavior therapy. We got to work on some things.
Right.
But I tell people therapy to me is like a pair of drawers. Okay. Every person is not a good fit. Right. It's every therapist is not going to be the one for you. So you may need to go to 1, 2, or 3 until you find somebody that you're comfortable with.
Right.
You may want a Black therapist. You may want a white therapist. You may want a woman. You may want a man. You might want somebody with a master's degree. I know I won't see anybody without a PhD and above. That was just me.
Right.
You got to be more credentialed than I am. You know what I'm saying? For me to come see you. But you need to see somebody. and they need to start working you through that trauma. But you need to be able to go in there and be ready to be honest and to be open. So that way you can really get this addressed. It's not going to be easy. It's going to hurt, because you're finally going to deal with something that you have been suppressing and numbing and not dealing with for years. You're going to find the floodgates are going to be open, and you're finally going to start going through a range of emotions that you haven't had the experience. Wow. But once you really start working the process, I'm telling you, freedom is there. Like, freedom is there. Right. And to be able to truly forgive the people who have hurt you or harmed you, it's like, it's refreshing. And I only say that from experience. Wow. Like, I can honestly say I have no ill will towards anyone that has ever harmed me or has done any kind of damage to me that has caused any kind of trauma in my life. Right. They don't have that power. And that I am free of that. And I thank God for that. I do also think another important aspect is the spiritual component. Right. Because people who hurt you are equally just as broken. Right. Trauma people, and people that are inflicting our traumas have been traumatized themselves somewhere on down the road. A healthy person doesn't inflict pain on anybody else. Wow. Not intentionally, by no means, shape, form, or fashion. Right. So I think that there's that spiritual component of generational. Sometimes it's generational. You'll hear about, generations of generational sexual abuse. Right. Maybe a mother was sexually assaulted, then a child sexually assaulted, then the next child sexually assaulted. Right. So I believe in the power of prayer, because I believe that the devil does like to use broken people to continue to make other people broken also. Facts. The devil can't get you to be out here wilding if you ain't broken. Right. He can't get you out here engaging in all kinds of sin if you ain't broken. Right. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be broken to a certain level to be able to be manipulated and to want to inflict harm on other people. Right. But everybody that's broken doesn't, or everybody that's always been through trauma doesn't always become a perpetrator or, that kind of an offender to someone else. But, I'm sure that, for me, I used to yell a lot. Used to be, could be very aggressive. For me, could be very aggressive. I would, especially after my first husband, I would, if I felt like you was going to roll up on me, like, I'm going to roll up on you first. Like, because I'm not going to let you, because I already knew I was traumatized by that event.
Already been through that. Right.
I already been through it. So I know the signs that you about to come at me. No, I'm about to come at you first. Right. So I had to work through that, because that wasn't conducive for me to be in any kind of relationship like that with anyone. Right. So I tell people, you got to get the therapy. You got to get the therapy. If you want to get a Christian therapist, that's even better. Right. But find somebody you trust. Right. And really just be honest and trust the process. Even when it gets hard, just trust the process. And if that process isn't working for you, you need to figure out why. And that's why I said, psychoeducation is so important, because when you start talking about mental health as a whole, there's a lot of things that our community does not know. Right. Does not know. And in our community, a lot of times we're forced to get therapy. Like when I was an MST therapist, I'm dealing with sex offenders. I'm dealing with children who got extreme behavioral issues that are in the legal system. And guess what? They're on probation. Right. And here comes the judge saying, well, they got to get MST therapy. And the parents are like, I can't meet my schedule. Some parents legit just did not have the time. Right. But you want somebody to come in their home 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours a visit. And if the parents can't comply, the court will say, well, I'll fine you anywhere between $39,000 and $60,000. Money they don't have. Right. So you're forcing this thing that they don't really understand about on them. Right. And the benefits of that. All they know is they got a stranger coming in their home, telling them what they need to do with their kid and trying to help them. That's foreign. It doesn't feel good. Right. So I think that we need more education just about mental health in general to the community so that they know what their rights are, they know what the process is, they feel comfortable, and they feel educated enough that they can really go and seek help if they truly need it.
Nah, yeah, that's a fact right there. And it's like you said, a lot of times that's the thing with the Black community. And I can speak from my background. I know a lot of guys, they wind up getting their GED education in prison. A lot of them wind up getting trades in prison. And like you said, a lot of times through the court system, they wind up getting it, whether it's anger management, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's like treatment.
Yeah.
A lot of us is like, we don't do change until we have no other choice but to change.
That's right.
Is that something that was put on us because our people before us didn't know any better? Or is that just resistance to change in us as people?
It's comfortability. It's not resistance. It's just comfortability.
Right.
We get comfortable doing what we've been doing. It's been working. I've been coping just fine.
Right.
Even though they know deep down in their heart that ain't true.
Fun. It ain't fun, right?
But it's like, I'm not about to go share my deepest, darkest secrets with nobody. I'm not supposed to be emotional. I'm not supposed to be vulnerable. Right. Women, we have a prejudiceness against each other. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, the ratio is what? 5 women to 1 man. So it's like women are so judgmental and we're so critical and we're so crucial to one another because women are always feeling like they're in competition with each other. Right. And that's a problem. So I don't think that it's resistance to change. I think it's the habit that's been formed.
Right.
It's kind of like this. Like, my doctor told me I got to quit smoking, right? He's like, if you don't quit smoking cigarettes in 10 years, you're going to have a stent in your heart.
Right.
I said, oh no. Like, you're about to get me. We ain't about to do no open heart, nothing over here. Like, we're not about to do none of that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I've been smoking for over 20 years.
So it's hard and a habit.
The habit is real. Like, I could be the first person to admit, y'all, like, I am like, okay, I can get a day. I got a day in. Matter of fact, I got 2 days in. And then I came. I was like, I was almost there. You know what I'm saying? But it just goes to show you that you may stumble, but it's about the effort. And I promise it will get easier. And I try to tell myself that every day, like, I can do this. It will get easier. Right. Because I can't use a patch. Makes me sick. So I'm really having to do this like the cold turkey way. You know what I'm saying? So I have to constantly talk to myself and kind of, go through the motions with myself about quitting. So I ended up calling the NC Quit hotline. It was like, look, I'm talking to somebody. Let me talk to somebody, Right. So we all got to acknowledge that there's something in our lives that we want to change.
That's a fact.
So we just got to take the steps to allow ourselves to go through it. And I'm a firm believer in what did Jesus say? Jesus said, persecute the flesh and follow me.
Right. Wow.
Jesus never said that it wasn't going to be easy.
Never said it wasn't.
I think, and it is weird. People may find me odd for this, but I thank God for my story.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I thank God for my story every day because I have texture and I have layers and I have personality that I would not have had I never went through nothing. I wouldn't be the me that I love about myself. Right. So I'm not, you got to tell yourself, you're not a victim. It's not your fault. This didn't do nothing but make you stronger.
Right.
It gave you texture and layers and the ability to help somebody else, to teach somebody else, to be there for somebody else in their time of need. You've got to find a positive in your negative every day. Because if you don't, you're going to let the negative consume you.
Right. That's real. That's a powerful thing right there. And he also said your testimony. It's like a lot of things we go through is not for us. It's for somebody else to be able to tell. Right. So, it's all spirituality. It is. One thing about this podcast right here in this platform, we definitely acknowledge God. We definitely give Jesus the glory. Yes. Because a lot of us wouldn't be here.
No.
If it wasn't for that. So,
I know that. I know for a fact that God has brought me out of a couple situations that in my past, I shouldn't be here. Like, I know I shouldn't be here. You know what I'm saying? So I thank God for that. And I thank God for those experiences because it has allowed me to be effective in the positions that I have been in.
Right.
The only reason I left mental health is because I don't like the direction in which companies choose to push their mental health.
Right.
And so my biggest thing was creating a forum where I can do psychoeducation with people around the world, and educate them in ways that may be beneficial to them, to maybe help them really get the information they need to really start poking through and like I said, understanding their rights and really, really, really trying to get what's needed for them.
That's really true right there. That's really powerful. And the thing is with trauma, and we talked about this before we even set up the thing.
Right.
The thing with trauma is so big. It's so many things that I wanted to talk about. But it's so many categories, so many layers of trauma.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know if people watching, if this is something that they would, maybe once a month, so that we can really tap into this, because I think a lot of people need it.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of knowledge, and even like we were talking earlier, a lot of the things, it's like, because I don't want the cycle to continue in my life, and I don't want it to be in my kids' life.
Right.
So, I know your schedule and things like that, but let's put it together.
Okay.
We're gonna see what the people say in the comments.
All right.
And if they willing, let's do this thing like once a month.
Okay.
And if it picks up, we can do it more. But let's start with once a month.
Okay.
So that we can touch on everything, because I know you have a family and everything. I don't want to hold you all night. But there's a lot of things that we didn't get to touch on. You had some key points. So right about now, let's hit those right quick. Okay. And then now, getting free. After we hit the points, let's talk about getting free, forgiving ourselves. Now,
yes.
And starting the process. And then we'll do the part 2 the next time from there. That sounds good?
Yeah. So yes, we got to remember that trauma is an event that changes or alters, our perceptions. And that event is usually based on a harmful situation, something that causes us harm. We know that there are 3 different types of trauma. We talked about that, your chronic, your acute, your complex. We know that trauma, affects everyone differently. Signs are, severe drug use, alcoholism, withdrawalness, depression, even anxiety. PTSD is definitely a sign of trauma. Hypervigilance is definitely attached to that. Right. Fear or trauma is really something that affects how we live our everyday lives. PTSD is known to disrupt lives, but trauma can affect your everyday life. And we got to, remember and remind ourselves of what we've been through as adults and what we counter transfer to our children.
Right.
Our children are children. We should always remember to let them stay as innocent as they can, because that innocence doesn't last forever once they're introduced to the world. We also have to be willing to communicate with our kids and to have conversations with our kids that maybe our parents didn't have conversations with us about.
Right.
We gotta be the protectors of our children. We gotta watch over our children. We gotta get off social media so much. We gotta start addressing things that are happening to us.
Right.
What has happened to us? Let's get free. Let's get some help. Because once you get free, sky really is, you're open to a whole new world of possibility and health.
Right.
You can see things now that you couldn't see before. Things that you would probably deal with. You ain't dealing with that no more. Them people out your life. It could be friends. It could be family. It could even be some toxic family members that you like, no, I ain't dealing with that. Like,
I ain't doing it.
It could be just a lot of things that you'll find that you're starting to remove the negativity and the dead weight out of your lives. And it's not that you don't love people.
Right.
But we all have to be responsible when we are an adult for our choice of change. I can give you the information, but I can't do the work for you.
Wow.
And if you don't want to do the work, then you're going to be where you're going to be until you're ready. Like you said, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Right. And a lot of times people got to hit that rock bottom. You know, but I say let them hit the rock bottom.
Right.
Because we all got to go through it.
We all got to go through it.
We all got to go through it. We all have got to go through our breaking point.
Right.
To get to some place that we're going.
Wow. Wow. When you said that, it just reminded me of the children of Israel. A 40-day voyage took them 40 years.
Right. Because God wanted to kill off the older Israelites. Right. Because he knew they were tainted. And they were going to take the promised land.
Right.
And God said, so we're going to let y'all die, y'all. And I'm going to let these children, this next generation inherit the land. And Israel's a great point that you brought up. It's a great point because, right. They would always mess up. And then God would have to send the oppressor. Then they would cry out. They would do right. God will come and, deliver them. And it's constantly that cycle. And I tell people all the time, God loves us regardless of what we've done.
Right.
Right. The Bible says that. Like if God loves your pedophiles and your murderers and all these people that have done these heinous crimes in the world, if God loves them, then he loves you.
He loves you.
And I say, now everybody probably ain't gonna go to heheaven. Because I believe the Bible says everybody ain't gonna go to heaven.
It said everybody ain't gonna make it. Now everybody's not gonna make it.
But the people that do go to hell, I hope y'all ain't one of them, but I'm just saying the people that do go to hell, I think God still loves them too.
He do.
But he's like a father that's going to reprimand you for your consequences.
Right.
And what we fail to realize about trauma is we're allowing an experience that we didn't ask to happen to us, control us, and self-destruct us, and rob us from our blessing and our purpose. We're giving that control away and our destiny away. That's leading us down a life of sin and other destructive, self-hurting things that we don't have to be in bondage to.
Right.
We don't have to be in bondage. And trauma is bondage.
And saying that, it just made me think of something real quick. It's like not to make light of the incidences that we go through that cause the trauma. It's like that incident happens once.
Right.
But it's like you have people that's still 20 years later that's still being affected from an incident that happened one time.
Yes.
15 years later, 30 years later. And like you said, giving power to it, where we still walking around. It's kind of like we walking around holding all this burden, baggage, all this other stuff. Wow. And we empower it.
But you'll hear people say it all the time, like it wasn't my fault. Like nothing's ever their fault. Everything's always somebody else's fault.
Right.
It's the not taking the responsibility.
Right.
Because there was some form of trauma somewhere in their life. So now because of that one trauma incident or that multiple trauma incidents, right?
Right.
Has robbed them of everything that they could have been or could have done. That's the belief system.
Right.
The trauma has held them in bondage so long. Now, every event that has happened after that in their life, it didn't work out because of somebody else's fault. Wow. But the trauma has got them just so cognitively distorted. And they don't accept responsibility. That's why I said you got to understand, like, even if you're an adult and you're raped, that incident is not your fault.
Right.
But you got to get some help and you got to work through that. But you can't go the rest of your life blaming somebody else or blaming everybody else for everything that goes wrong in your life.
Right.
At some point, we have got to be responsible, especially for us who have childhood trauma. When we become adults, we become responsible. We make every other choice in our life on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So we got to make the choice to not hold, everybody else accountable for everything that goes wrong in our lives. And every time we say, oh, well, this happened to me, we're still living as a victim.
Right.
We're not talking like a survivor of something. We're talking about we're still a victim. So that means it's just never, ever, ever been addressed. And that is sad. And I have seen people like that, in the prison system, older women. And it just breaks my heart because there's still that child on the inside that is still broken and needs healing.
Right. Wow. I read a book one time from my bishop. It was called The Little Boy and Me. And he was talking that same type of situation where it's like he was 50 at the time. Where it was like it's different stages of him that pops back up. The 5-year-old that was molested, the 12-year-old that seen his father leave his mother, the 17-year-old that hit crack. These were different stages of his life. And he said in his mind, at 50 years old, they still pop up. So on a certain day, you may look at him as a 50-year-old man, but because of that incident that happened to him, that 5-year-old manifests.
Yeah.
And from that, it may be irritability. It may be that nasty attitude. It may be that lashing out. It may be that judgment from these different times of his life. And it's like, it was a spiritual book, but it's like, I hear you keep saying spiritual warfare, things like that, how it all ties together. Deliverance. And that's definitely seeing Cruz put the I love you in there. He's telling me, all right, Si.
I wanted to hit something right quick because you had just brought that up, and it was just so cool because it made me think of another point.
Cool.
When we talk about multiple personality disorder, people say, "Oh, it doesn't exist. It's very rare." It's not true. A lot of people just haven't seen it, but it does exist. And it's kind of crazy because you can really get into the conversation about the CIA really experimenting with it. And a lot of people know that that's what they call MK Ultra.
Right.
But if you take a child and you introduce a child to multiple traumas, right? Repeat the trauma over and over and over and over and over again. And they would do it with imagery. You can create alters in the brain because trauma can cause the brain to actually split. And now you can develop different personalities. And a lot of times you'll have the little girl, you'll have the adult or someone older, and she's a protector of that child. So when they're in a stressful situation or an environment that they think is harmful, that alter would come out to create the protection. So it's a very real thing. They actually did a lot of documentaries on the CIA experimenting, and there were some people in Canada that's still alive. They actually spoke out about their experience and what happened to them. It's just something worth noting that I tell people that you should look at. The Kensington Institute, which is still open today, actually did a lot of experiments, and they're based out of Indiana. They did a lot of experiments on child sexual abuse. And they would time the child sexual abuse. And they would make like fathers or uncles, they would sign up and they would sexually abuse their own children for a certain amount of minutes. It's some really sick stuff that was going on back in the day. So that's why I'm like, you got to look at the lengthiness of victimization and how long that's been happening within our families, within our cultures. And we really got to understand and see things so that we can really try to break some cycles. But there is great information out here that you can really go and look at about how trauma is, how they use certain things to induce a certain amount of trauma to create a specific thing that they want to create in a person. So you just got to be aware of that. And that's why I said healing is so important. And, but narcissistic behavior, narcissistic personality disorder is also from trauma. And that narcissistic behavior is just a facade of someone who is so severely insecure and so severely shattered by their trauma that they have created a whole nother image that they present to the world, kind of like your social medias. A lot of those people are very narcissistic, hiding behind the facade instead of just being themselves. But they're so broken and so damaged, they believe that no one will ever accept them for who they are. So they have to be somebody else in order for the acceptance and the love that they crave. But really, that's a lie. But narcissistic personality disorder is something that's very, very hard to treat. And a lot of times they don't they don't heal. And that's why I tell people it's good to self-love, but don't be self-absorbed.
Wow, that's powerful right there.
Because that's borderline right there. It's borderline.
It's kind of like the bully syndrome or the mean girl. Mm-hmm. It's like because they have insecure or step on other people to feel better about yourself, or because I'm afraid, or because I'm insecure. Let me bully you. Let me torture you to hide my insecurities. Yeah, this is deep. I don't know if we're gonna make it a month because, like I said, this stuff is so real and it's so needed. We're going after we're gonna talk. Everybody gonna sit down and we're gonna come up with the schedules. But I think that this topic right here is really needed, and we need to continue like a series, maybe.
Okay, I'm with it.
I'm gonna see. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna see what your schedule is like, and we're gonna put it together because I'll block it off for that day so that we can make them happen. Because I know that this series would definitely benefit somebody, and I know you got the family, so I don't want to hold you all night. It's going on 9:30. But I love the conversation. Yeah. I love the information. I love what you're doing because not only are you just saying the information, your heart, you have a passion for this.
Yes.
And you have a passion for helping people.
I do.
Like I said, I'm a witness to Crew's growth from meeting you. I salute you as a woman. I salute you as family because you're his wife. I extend my love to you. I extend my love to him for allowing you to do it.
Yes.
For doing the platform because you didn't have to.
I was super excited to do it. I love your energy. I love talking to you. You are great people. Your show is phenomenal. I love the different. I just love the different energy and the different personalities that you've been interviewing, and just giving everybody an opportunity to have a voice. Right. And I think that's really amazing. And you don't really see that a lot on a lot of different podcasts. Sometimes they're very, specific. But I like the fact that you're kind of branching out in a whole direction where you're just giving a lot of different people a platform, artists, marketing, people that build, build brands and marketing and, publicists. I just think that that's a really great thing. So I'm just really excited that I got to be a part of, something big that you're doing, even just it's a little small part, but I just appreciate the opportunity to do it. You've really given me, an opportunity to just explore and express my passion to people in a different way. And I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you. And like I said, I want to keep it going. So you're always welcome. We're going to get the dates together so that we can keep it going. And we'll just do like a mini series because it's so big. Yeah. It's kind of hard to share. Right.
And you can talk about anything, if you want to talk about certain mental health issues, like if you want to talk about a certain, diagnosis, we can talk about substance abuse, whatever it is that you want to talk about, you let me know and we'll get it rolling.
That'll work then. So what I'll do is I'll make a flyer and a poll.
Okay.
And I have people put in things that they may have questions about.
Yeah.
And then we'll knock it out that way. And again, I appreciate you for coming. Much love to you and the family. If you got any last words, and tell the people where they can follow you. And if you have any last words, you can say that now. And then from there, I'm going to drop the proof intro, and then I'm going to play the second video. But when I play the second video, it's going to end right after that.
Okay.
All right, cool.
At this particular moment, the only place that people can really follow me is on my Facebook. But I am currently working on a platform for psychoeducational stuff. And what we're going to just talk about all kinds of stuff, dating, relationships, boundaries, conflict resolution, you name it, you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. So I'm currently working on that platform. Once that platform is up and running, I will let everyone know where they can go and, subscribe and look and check it out. So I just appreciate for everybody tuning in and sitting with us for two hours and 30 minutes, and just hanging out and enjoying the conversation. And I hope that someone somewhere listening, felt like they got something they needed. I hope that it helped somebody somewhere.
It definitely helped me. So I'm one, and I'm pretty sure some other people, and I'm going to continue to share it as well. So more people will be viewing it. But I'm pretty sure, like I said, I've learned a lot, and I'm definitely for helping other people. So I know I'm not the only one, and we all have issues. So it's like the knowledge that you're giving me lets me know it's not going to be easy.
No.
But now I know I have to take it back to the beginning. I have to go back to early days. When did this start? Find the roots and start working my way back. Instead of looking at it now, a lot of people say, well, I've always been this way. Well, I may have always been this way, but I don't want to be this way anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And you got the power.
Right. And I definitely appreciate you, sis. Yo,
Thank
I
you.
love you. Yo, salute to everybody out there tuning in. Salute to everybody that watched us. Yo, this is the Proof in the Pudding podcast show. I'm your host, Sion 919. This is my sister, Natalie Collier. Yo, and we thank y'all again. This is the Proof, yo. Appreciate y'all.
Brain development is much more than a story about biology. From the earliest years, relationships with others play a key role in shaping how our brain grows and develops. Early relationships, where there is abuse and neglect, have a long-term impact on children. A brain that has adapted to survive in a threatening or unpredictable world may not work so well in an ordinary environment. This can create what is called latent vulnerability, where early abusive or neglectful experiences with carers put children at greater risk of experiencing mental health problems in the future. For these children, compared to their peers, common experiences like moving to a new school can feel more daunting and stressful. New faces can appear threatening, while positive social cues can be missed. It can be harder to negotiate new social situations and learn to trust new people. Even fun experiences like joining a new sports team can be challenging. Too much focus on potential threat cues can mean missing out on positive social cues such as a playful nudge. Or it causes an overreaction, which leads to an increased risk of conflict and sometimes violence. These reactions can increase the likelihood of generating new stressful events. It's harder to deal with everyday challenges when you feel unconfident and anxious inside, and harder to build and maintain relationships. Over time, this can mean a child loses friends and the support of adults, and so misses out on opportunities to grow and develop. This social thinning can increase the risk of mental health problems in the future. Neuroscience research is beginning to shed new light on how vulnerability unfolds over a child's life. All children need care and stimulation from adults who value them and who show them attention and love. These experiences shape a child's brain development. When children face traumatic experiences like abuse and neglect, their brain adapts to help them cope. We know of changes in 3 different brain systems: the reward, memory, and threat systems. Experiences of domestic violence or physical abuse can lead to hypervigilance, where the brain reacts more to threat. This might help a child stay safe in an early adverse environment, but it can cause problems in more ordinary environments. Hypervigilance can best be understood as a pattern of adaptation rather than a sign of damage. Abuse and neglect can also mean a world where a child's basic needs for care and attention are not met. This can shape the brain's reward system, the part of the brain that helps us learn about positive aspects of our environment and motivates our behaviour. Over time, the brain's reward system can learn to respond differently to things like positive social cues. Neuroscience studies have also pointed to changes in the autobiographical memory system, our memory of everyday past experiences. Following trauma, negative memories appear to become more salient, which means they become more prominent than positive ones. And everyday memories can also become less detailed. This is a problem because we need to draw on past experiences to help us deal with new social situations. Neuroscience research is showing how childhood trauma can create latent vulnerability, increasing the risk of later mental health problems like anxiety and depression. This vulnerability is not just located in the child, but arises through their relationships. Helping children who have experienced trauma still requires ordinary boundaries and consequences, but it also requires us to step back and reflect.
and see behaviour that we find challenging in a different light. A child may simply be doing their best to survive now, with brain adaptations from the past. We know a child's brain has the capacity to continue to adapt. For this to happen, they need our help to build and maintain trusted relationships, manage everyday stresses, and prevent new ones from happening. We need to encourage them to try again and believe things can be different. This is far from an easy task and takes time. Science is helping reframe our understanding of childhood trauma. Seeing children's behaviour in a new light can mean we respond differently. But there is much still to learn. Working together, we can develop more effective approaches that promote resilience and recovery. We can help children build trusting relationships and create opportunities for their brains to adapt in new ways.